Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is C-Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 140 of Beer and Other Shit, the podcast, Adjunct series. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fantastic one tonight. The American breweries that we get to talk to on the podcast are always super fun. I feel like we get a whole bunch of different perspectives, and obviously typically here we speak to a lot of Ontario and Quebec-based breweries here in Canada. So when we get to talk to the American ones, I'm a huge fan of it. Obviously, we do a lot of beer traveling in the States, and this particular brewery, we were there back in July of 2019. And so it's about 4 years, almost to the month. We're in August now, but just after, since we last spoke. So a lot of things would have changed for these guys. The state where these gentlemen are from is one of my favorites in the world of any beer area and region. I love it so much. I'm just really excited to get into it, y'all. So please, let me bring this up. Please welcome Lee and Jake of Crooked Run in the building. Welcome, you legends. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Freaking delightful. Really great to have you guys on. As I was saying, 4 years. That's kind of crazy. It feels that long, but it kind of doesn't as well. I don't know. It's weird. It's like a weird little...
For sure.
Yeah.
COVID has made everything seem like, a million years or like yesterday. So, yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's crazy. I was saying to Lee off air while we were setting up that, it's been cool to watch you guys do, just grow and change over the last few years via social, catching Instagram and Facebook posts and everything. And like, even just we're mapping out before what we're going to talk about. There's a whole bunch has been happening. I love hearing that. I love seeing the growth. So I'm excited to get into all the convo. But first things first, let's get a beer in us, boys. Tell us about what we're starting with.
So the first beer you've got is Labor Days, correct?
That's the one. Here we go.
Cool. Yeah. So this is the one of 4 special 10-year anniversary beers that we did.
That's
and each one was a multi-collab with a couple of our friends. This one is Wild East and Wheatland Spring. So 2 awesome lager makers. We've done some collabs with them in the past, and we did this one, so in the summertime, we brew a lot of corn lagers using heirloom corn malt and 100% Virginia grain, which is the same thing we do in all the beers. But this beer, Labor Days, uses red, white, and blue corn.
That's so fun.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it doesn't really like add any color or like any particularly different flavors that are super noticeable, but yeah, it's just something cool to do because in the our other corn lagers, we have one with red corn, one with blue corn, and one with white corn. So just mix them all together, and it is a double decocted lager. All the corn lagers have like pretty light dry hop, but not anything that you would jump out at you because that would completely overtake a little low ABV lager like that. But
Totally.
Super crisp. Super refreshing. It's kind of our take on, the fabled pre-Prohibition lager, kind of the beer that apparently Americans drank before Prohibition, but
believe
just super crushable summer beer.
When you say apparently, do you not believe it?
I mean, all that beer lore is I feel like half of it is apocryphal. Like, the whole beer on, highly hop beer on ships to India, created IPA thing is apparently not true. So
Really?
Once I found that out, I was like, yeah, I mean, who knows how much of the rest of it is true. But yeah, so it's kind of complicated. I read it one time. It's like there's like a kernel of truth to it, but the reality is like it wasn't done that way. It just was mostly made for, British markets, and they sent some to India, but it's a whole different nerdy subject. But yeah, just the corn lagers, like obviously we have plenty of corn and rice lagers today with all the macro lagers and stuff. But this is, something that actually has a bit more flavor, and obviously has more of a hop presence too.
Definitely. Oh, the nose is crazy. First of all, boys, cheers. Great to hang.
Cheers.
Wow. This has got like what's the ABV? It's got to be 5.
No, I think that one's
5.
4.2. Oh, it's
Wow.
5?
It says 4.5. Yeah, on the can anyway. This does not taste that. I feel like this has got to be one of the. Would you consider this like an American light lager? Would that be the category, like a craft version? Yeah,
For sure.
this is one of the most flavorful ones I've ever had. Like I expected something a lot. You know how like I love craft versions of these. By the way, I think they're super fun. I feel like they're a great gateway for existing macro drinkers, and I think gateway beers are super important. But this is crazy. This is like. What's giving it this punch? I feel like this. I mean, maybe I'm literally my one sip and my first beer of the night, but like, what's giving it that that punch? Is it the different corn? Like,
It's double decoction for sure.
okay, let me note that down. Double decoction. So is it? I guess it's not standard for a lager of this style to be double decocted.
No, I mean even with like craft breweries these days, it's not very typical. All our other corn lagers are step mashed, which just kind of helps give it a drier finish. But
Okay.
the double decoction is something that we do, in German styles a lot. But we just, all 4 of these anniversary releases, we kind of wanted to pull out all the stops and just put, the maximum amount of effort that we would typically put into a beer, into all of them. So. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, the double decoction gives it. It's kind of hard to describe the flavors of a decoction. It's sort of correct to say it amplifies like malty flavor, but that it doesn't necessarily create like a really malty or sweet tasting beer.
Okay.
It just kind of gives it a depth of flavor that it wouldn't have otherwise.
Huh. That is fascinating, and I imagine because I know this was like you said the 10th anniversary. That was in, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of mid-June. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
June 24th.
24th. Okay. And being that was so close to Independence Day, was that the reason for the red, white, and blue corn?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know. Just in general, like American brewery, we have a big American flag right behind the brew house. And like I said, we do 3 other corn lagers normally, and each one is with a single variety of corn. So we did one with Bloody Butcher, red corn, one with Buena Vista, white corn, and then one with Tex Malt, Indian Blue.
Okay. That's fascinating. I've never even heard. I think I remember back in the day, a mate went to like Peru or something and brought me back like a purple corn. I want to say it was an IPA and it was actually purple. Do the blue and the red corn emit any colors like that, or was that like maybe something they added some dye or something in?
No, you can. So blue and red don't, but purple corn is like a kind of different thing. The kernels are like really huge, and to get color out of that, you actually have to steep it. It doesn't work mashing it. We actually did a purple corn lager with Dissolver, another collab, maybe like a year ago. But yeah, you won't really get any color unless you use a bunch of it and you just like lightly crush it and steep it in the finished beer.
Gotcha.
Yeah, otherwise minimal color contribution. But it's just corn's not super expensive or anything, so it's easy enough to spring for the good stuff and throw that in there.
Okay. This is fascinating. I can't get past how punchy this beer is. This isn't crazy to me. Just like being this light color and this much flavor, I've definitely never experienced that before. And I guess that's cool. Learning something. I didn't know. The double decoction then, is that something where did that idea come from? I guess the other 2 breweries that the collab is with crispy guys. So did it come from?
Oh yeah, I mean, so all 3 of us do decoctions pretty frequently, and
Okay.
I mean, I can't speak for those guys on the particular beers they do it in, but like for us, we started. I think our first decoction mash was outside. We've been doing decoctions on our mix room beers for a long time,
Okay.
because that's what you have to do. That's kind of what a turbid mash is, sort of. But I think we did our first decoction on a clean beer with our Schwartz beer. That was our first Oktoberfest release like 3 or 4 years ago. And then we've been doing them ever since then. And we almost like, we have a core Pilsner that we do that doesn't have a decoction on it, but almost everything else has a decoction at this point, 1, 2, or sometimes 3. They're a pain in the ass, and huge props to our brewer Ryan for doing them, because like you got to you got to lean over, a boil kettle that's very hot and stir it constantly so it doesn't burn. And it is tough, but he does them, and can do that for a solid 10 minutes without his arms falling off. So he's the guy that gets that done. And the only thing with the decoction is it adds a ton of time to the brew day. So like if you're brewing 4 times into a tank, like you probably not doing decoctions on that beer. It would just take a good 20 hours if you did it that way.
Jeez. Okay, so it's hectic, and it's a dedication to do something like this.
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, I think it's worth it. Damn, this is crazy, man. The flavors, yeah, it's super toasty, tons of malt flavor. I feel like it's got the subtle corn in the back. I don't feel like it's overwhelming like the lighter lagers. Like the malt presence is great, a little bit of grassy bitterness in it. It's fantastic, boys. Well done. Great stuff.
Thank you.
So I just double checked, and the last pod was, longer story, but we changed all the format of everything, and we moved everything into seasons. So this is the season that we're doing right now, is all of the virtual pods. So if people want to hear the full story of the original season, it's episode 147. If people want to go back and listen to that, that's where we're going to get into the story. We're not really going to go into that tonight. Maybe it might be worth very briefly just mentioning what you both do in the brewery, just for people have context on that, and then they can go listen to that for the full history. And we're going to talk about other fun stuff tonight. Whoever wants to go first. Yeah, Jake, what do you do then, man?
Sure. So I handle production management, distribution, and marketing.
Okay. Beauty. And Lee, what are you up to?
Operations, front of house, make sure that we're open, we've got electricity and flowing water, so we can make beer.
Very important stuff. So when we did the pod, it was in the Sterling, Virginia location, which from memory was maybe like 15 to 20 minutes from Alexandria. Sounds about right? Yep. There's a second location that you had back then, which was in, remind me?
Leesburg, Virginia.
Leesburg.
So that's probably another 20 minutes west of Sterling.
Okay, perfect. And then the third location that opened up recently was in DC. Is that correct?
Yep, it's in northeast DC in the Union Market District.
Amazing.
Union Market's a pretty historical landmark there.
Amazing, boys. I mean, look, that's huge in this economy type of thing, and opening the new spot. I saw the photos. Like the front looks awesome with the design. They really, the branding consistency is crazy. The branding that we're seeing on the cans now, and across obviously the space, was that around back then in 2019, or had things changed since then?
No, good observation. So we switched from Crooked Run Brewing to Crooked Run Fermentation.
Okay.
And that was primarily driven by the fact of we started making wine, got into making cider and seltzer as well during 2020, 2021. So Jake wanted to rebrand to Crooked Run Fermentation from brewing.
Love that. I mean, look, that makes a lot of sense, and we're definitely going to get into that tonight. So then, to catch everybody up on, since we last spoke to now, where do we start? I mean, obviously the, coming into 2020, shit hit the fan everywhere. Without sort of everyone probably a little over talking about it, but what did you guys do? How did you guys pivot? How did you guys kind of get through those, couple years?
So
yeah,
whoever.
That's a very good question. So in 2020, obviously, when things hit the fan, I was just coming off of maternity leave. My wife and I had our first kid born New Year's Day 2020. I took the month off, and so I returned to work in February. And very gung-ho, Jake was holding things down, and things were going great. And then it wasn't until March when things came to a grinding halt there, and we had to immediately pivot because no one knew what was going on. Um, Luckily, we had bought a canning line back in August of 2019. And had our own canning line, so we were able to quickly switch over to um, pickup, curbside pickup, because no one was allowed to come inside the building, and we switched a lot of the existing draft into cans so we could sell. Got creative as much as possible. As soon as regulations lifted, just even the slightest, we took advantage of it with outdoor seating, and then Jake's actually sitting in the outdoor seating there in Sterling, and we added as much as we could, covered tents, heated, and it's just a continued evolution, trying to navigate through all the regulations, abiding by all the restrictions that we had, and trying to make people feel safe during a very uncertain time.
Mm.
We never laid off anybody. We were able to keep everyone employed. That includes even our restaurant and cocktail bar. So
Oh yeah,
I think we had 40 employees that we were able to maintain during that time.
that's
And
amazing.
just literally every day, you had no idea what was going to happen. So you just did what you could.
It's
Yeah,
yeah. Keep going, keep going.
the main thing that we did that I'm really proud of is that we immediately made a huge investment in outdoor seating. I'm somebody who likes to drink beer outside. I'm outside right now, even though I'm getting torn up by mosquitoes. But like we had heated outdoor tents by like October of 2020, and like you saw other people do that, but not until like much later. And I mean, because we were like one of the few places in town that you could have a beer outside and not freeze your ass off, like our sales were pretty good, all things considered, that first year.
Hmm. That's dope. What was it like in Virginia itself? Was it pretty was it pretty, because in Canada it was like curfews, like it was kind of pretty bonkers. Like what was it like in Virginia? Was it a bit more change a little bit, or was it all, what was the vibes?
Virginia is like a really good slice of all of America.
Okay.
So, you're in DC, people were freaking nuts about it. I mean, if you got COVID in DC, you didn't even want to tell your friends because like they'd get pissed off at you for like having been around them when you didn't even know you had it.
Okay.
But then in like central and southern Virginia, like nobody gave a shit about anything. So like basically like it ranged all over the place. But I think
Huh.
Virginia did things pretty smart. We had enough safety precautions without it being too crazy, and I certainly have no regrets about the what we did. We Lee was kind of taking the lead on that, and we meticulously followed all the rules. So we did everything we could, and like kind of for a brewery that wasn't a farm brewery and was really positioned to do okay during that time, we did pretty well.
Okay. I mean, look, that's great news. Um, I do remember you have it already. When we were there, there was already a really large outdoor seating spot. I remember hanging out after the pod and eating some of the firehouse tacos and crushing some more beers. So like you just tapped into that parking lot a little bit more, or is it the same space as far as the
Yeah,
outdoor?
we added two 20 by 40 tents, rigged up heating in that, and then we were able to get an additional, what was that, 96 seats outside.
Amazing.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did was pretty cool. Is like I don't know if you're familiar, but like outdoor heaters are super expensive,
Mm.
and we had the idea to just get some propane job site heaters and literally connect them to like ductwork and
Okay.
pipe them into our tents, and it worked like a charm. And I mean, it was like I don't know, maybe 1/10 of the cost of one of those. So we had this like pretty huge, like substantial toasty outdoor seating from the start of winter 2020.
That's great, man. That's really smart. So that kept things rolling pretty well, at least for the on-site side of things.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I was curious about, I was telling you both off air that I was in Florida in April. We were driving down to Key West from Miami, and there was a sign. There was like a billboard on the side of the, that 6 mile, 7 mile highway, whatever it's called, and it was like the last stop for don't pay Key West prices, get it here, whatever it was. And we're like, all right, my girlfriend wanted some stuff. I'm like, sweet, I'll grab some stuff too. So I went in, and they had, I think, 1 or 2 different brands from you guys, and I was like, whoa, like I didn't know. I just still don't know a ton about the distro side of things in the States, and I know that each state differs, from each other. But I thought that was sick, and I'm like, wow, like I don't know if you had that before, but to me that felt pretty far from Virginia. Like, did distro become a big strategy for you guys around COVID, or were you doing this pre-COVID as far as the how far out it went?
We were doing it before COVID. I mean, as a brewery, like we were 75%, 25% on-prem to distro, which, like, I mean, that's I think really the sweet spot, and it shifted more to distro these days. But
Okay.
we were still distributing beer to Florida. Like, you saw a ton of East Coast breweries doing that over the years because, like, everybody likes hanging out in Florida. So,
Yeah.
send some beer down there, you do some festivals and stuff. And there's a great beer scene there and really great people as well. Yeah, I mean, you saw basically COVID pushed a lot of breweries into distro more. And, initially you saw beer that was for the first time available in distribution. And that was part of just like the general expansion of breweries, like breweries that are selling out every release, they get more tanks, they have more beer, and then some of the beer makes the distro. Some of it was like shipping. Shipping became a huge thing that kind of first 2 years. And then the rest of it was just like kind of what we see now is COVID really conditioned a lot of people to buy their beer from the grocery store. I mean, a lot of like hardcore beer fans would still go to bottle shops and stuff, but your average casual beer drinker during COVID, they were making only one stop outside of maybe work or seeing friends or family, and that was a grocery store. And so that's where they were buying a lot of their beer, and that's become actually like pretty important these days, for us at least.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, bottle shops are still, that's the most common place you find our beer because we're not big enough to be in, every mid-Atlantic chain out there. But yeah, it's definitely good to have your beer in at least 1 or 2 grocery store chains right now.
That's amazing. That's such a smart move. I never thought of that. And you're right. Like, what I noticed, there was definitely more of a craft presence, at least in Florida, that I noticed there. It wasn't like really for me. Like, I risked it a couple times, but I got like Highlight or like Two Hearted or something that was like, everything else was just old. That was the problem, I guess. Like a lot of because people were probably going in there getting like 2 fours of Heineken or Bud or something. Like they weren't really like the craft. At least where I went, maybe I wasn't going to the right areas to get it, so I wasn't like crazy impressed. I always checked. Anytime I went to a supermarket, I checked. But I can see what you mean though. Like, so were you doing that pre-COVID as far as grocery, or was that like only after COVID or during?
Not as much. So we got a chain around here called Wheatland,
Yes.
and it's the best. They've been carrying us for quite some time, and actually one of my best friends was their major beer buyer, and he helped get us in there, going back like 7 years ago. But other than that, stores like that, you look at grocery stores, some of them have like a buyer for each store, and some of them have one national buyer for all of them, and then some of them it's regional. There's a whole mix. But as a smaller place, like you're a little bit restricted to chains that have like a little bit more individual type setup for buyers, because we couldn't go into every like giant out there, but
Right.
Wegmans has different stuff in every store. So we've been there for quite a while, and then we've gone into a couple other places since then. But yeah, like I'm not somebody that ever feels like there's some breweries that don't want to see their stuff in grocery stores because it's not part of their brand. It's kind of a hit to their brand or whatever. But I've always just felt like I like our beer. I think we have a really, really nice selection of core beers, and it makes me happy seeing, that they're available to regular people, not just, mega beer nerds who go into bottle shops. So I'm all for it.
Okay.
And being available in the grocery stores allows you to reach the non beer nerds or the non craft beer people. So like when you talk to a lot of people from uh, friends of friends or family or things like that, like they ask about, oh, Crooked Run, are you in grocery stores? That's usually what they say because they go to grocery stores and don't go to bottle shops. So it allows you to connect again, like Jake said, to the more common beer drinker, and
Hey.
it's always nice to hear someone say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of Crooked Run," rather than "Oh, I've never heard of you." And we've been around.
And groceries, that differentiator for you guys.
Yeah, like exactly what Lee said. Like all of us are used to operating in this bubble where, like, we know every hype brewery and all the breweries in our state and stuff. And then, like, I did a tasting at a bottle shop like a month ago, and like, this is a neighborhood bottle shop. It's a lot of like just people that live in the neighborhood and are just walking around and stuff. They don't know about any of this stuff,
Right.
and they've never heard of us. And every time I did a tasting at a grocery store, like, I would say 9 out of 10 people had never heard of us before.
Okay.
And that's great because, like, I really want to reach more people that haven't had our stuff yet. But yeah, it's just very easy to fall into that kind of, you have blinders on because you're just so used to working in this industry. But most people, they're not, following 50 breweries on Instagram and tracking any of it. And I think that people like that are, in some aspects, like, they're the kind of people you want to reach because they're the most likely to say, like, I had a positive experience with this brewery and I like this beer and I want to keep drinking it, versus, big hardcore beer nerd who just is drinking, whatever new shit they can get their hand on, or whatever has the highest on tap rating that week.
Gotcha. This is great because I was literally about to ask all of you guys to answer the questions all before I could even get there. I love this this whole conversation about Gateway because I feel like it's by far the most underrated element of craft beer. Like you said, we always, like you said, Jake, that we're in a bubble and we always kind of like, echo chamber with ourselves. Like we're always talking about everyone we know knows the same jargon and slang and all the breweries in either your region or beyond and blah, blah, blah. But then, so what you guys are saying is that you would feel that the newer customer who isn't the typical beer nerd and follows all the breweries are going to probably be more loyal to 1, 2, 3 breweries that are near them because they're not, they really like beer, but they don't care about it enough to be chasing the latest hype release. Like, is that the type of customer that seems to be like the one that you guys are sort of after?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, so our brewery, I mean, I go on at length about this, but we've always made some pretty good beer. We've been around for 10 years, but we never really caught the kind of hype wave that you saw a lot of breweries that opened up a little bit later than us catch. And so, like, we'd sell out of some releases, but it wasn't like this, like, lines and trading frenzy thing going on with us. But I felt like the beer quality matched up to a lot of the stuff that people were really going after. But what we kind of always focused on was we were always thinking, like, what's going to happen after all this crazy hype in beer is over with? What are you going to be left with? And we were always super taproom focused, and Lee and I were, always around. We talked to customers and stuff. And I think everybody knows breweries like that, where, like, it's a lot of the connection is the people. But we tried to, have charity events, do, like, charity bingo, stuff like that to create that connection with the community. And also, as it happens, we made a lot of sour beers that, like, even people that didn't like beer like those, and it would make them super happy coming into the place as somebody that they thought they didn't like beer, and they try this fruited sour and they're like, oh, hey, I like beer now, and I can go to this place with my friends and not feel left out. And I'm just really happy that we never had like kind of an attitude of like we're too good to try to reach out to casual beer drinkers, because I think honestly some breweries did have that attitude, and it is really biting them in the ass right now. You see breweries that like 5 years ago, never in a million years would they do a run club, and they're trying to do it now, but like it's hard to get that sense of community going on, at this point. But it's something that we've really tried to do for years now.
Yeah, and having you basically can tap into a new market of new clients, and so far, you know, we haven't exposed ourselves enough to those types of beer drinkers, and so that is a great avenue for you to continue to grow your brand, which is what any business wants to do, is continue to be growing. Um, and as Jake said, we've done it in many different ways. Like um, we do charity bingo, and what that does is we rotate through a new charity every month, and so that gets non-beer drinkers or non-brewery craft beer, whatever you want to call it, coming into our place to see it, and it markets to them. They get to try a beer that they they thought they didn't like beer, but they try one of our fruited sour beers, and now they like beer, and they tell their friends, and they come back. So it kind of snowballs, and like the more different networks you can put yourself out into, of not specifically craft beer, the more you can kind of grow your brand. Um, when you were there in 2019, we had a taqueria. We had people coming in for lunch for tacos and realizing, hey, it's inside a brewery. I'm going to get a beer, or I'm going to come back after work and have a beer. It's great. Whatever you can do to kind of hit that customer in an indirect way.
I love that. I love that attitude, man. I was saying before you jumped on earlier, Jake, I was saying to Lee that in my mind, I thought you guys, and like you've sort of said, both of you have sort of said that you're not hype. I always thought you were the hype brewery, like out there, or one of the, Virginia hype breweries. I came in not knowing jack shit about Virginia breweries, so I had to ask people, where do I need to go? Because when we came with the tourism office, tourism offices don't really know what's popping. They go with the breweries that pay them to promote them. So like they're often not the place that I want to go to. So I ask people on Instagram, like, who do I need to go to? And you guys are on everybody's list. So all I can think of, the reason that you might not be in that world is because you started in 2013, and the hype train didn't really even start until 2015 at the earliest in Massachusetts, probably, and then 2016, 17, maybe later before then. Like, would that be accurate from you guys' perspective, as far as like just the style that you guys are doing? You guys are making fire haze. What was the flagship haze we had in the last one? The blue can.
Heart and Soul. Yeah.
Heart and Soul. That was crazy.
No, you're exactly correct on that. I mean, basically, it's pretty simple. By 2016 was when you really started to see that hit Virginia. Mm-hmm. That's when the Veil opened, and it's either 2016 or 15. I think it was 16.
I'll double check while you're talking.
So that's when you saw that really hit Virginia, and at that point we'd already been open for a while, and we were making like what was at the time like kind of adventurous beer, but it wasn't like fruited sour, hazy IPA, or pastry stout. And so our rating was kind of locked in at like a 3.5. And then we, fortunately, like, I like to brew everything, and I like everything that, every style if it's well executed. But we pivoted and started making those things, but we never really caught that wave. And when it comes to kind of hype, we kind of dance around the edges of it. Like, we do some kind of hypey festivals, and we have some beers that are pretty highly rated, but it just never really caught on. And it sucks because, like, on the one hand, like, if there was no financial aspect to it, I wouldn't give a shit about it. But there is. And the problem is that, like, it keeps you from being able to sell your beer out of market.
Okay.
You know, if your beers all have above a 4 rating, sadly, like it does have an effect. Like you can get into markets that you don't really have any ties to, because people will look it up and they'll be like, oh shit, this has a 4.2, I'm buying this.
Mm.
But I mean, it's I could go on and I'm not like particularly bitter about it, but I'm just acknowledging the reality of kind of what Untapped is. You can juice your Untapped scores like I wouldn't say easily, but there's some stuff you can do. And I mean, just a really minor one without any real manipulation is the first 10 ratings help establish what the weighted average is. And people just tend to rate a beer like if they see that everyone else has rated it like, you know, whatever, they're going to rate it somewhere close to that. Maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but like that forms in their mind, you know, kind of what it is.
That's fair.
Yes. So like it, like once you kind of have that established, it is always mind boggling to me because like I, you know, I pay attention to what other people are doing. I follow all these other breweries, and sometimes I'm really, really harsh on our beer. And I think like, you know, I want to really, really, you know, I don't know, just make everything absolutely perfect. And I'm not happy with this or that. And then I try some other breweries that have like way higher ratings than us. And I'm like, oh, you know, I actually think we're doing pretty well. Like, it's just, yeah, it's just the kind of place we're stuck in. But yeah, it does have an effect. But also less and less people really pay attention to them as time goes on. And I mean, already you see a huge swing towards drinking lager, and almost all lager has shitty ratings. Yeah, I mean, there's some ones that'll have, you know, better ones, but it's I don't know. I don't use the Appeton, but I don't think I've ever seen one that has above a 4. But that is by far what we were selling in the tap room these days, and it's been that way for a while. And we make great lagers, and we have been for a while too.
Well, it's really interesting again because we reach out to more of a blended craft beer minded customer, non-craft beer customer. The non-craft beer customer doesn't go on tap, and I would say more than half of the customers that we have coming in drinking the lagers and all the beers that we make very well, that's not getting then put into Untappd, you know, to help boost any of the rating, which again, like what Jake was saying, is like, unfortunately you get publications that all they do is they just look at Untappd ratings and they go, oh, okay, this is the number one, you know, the top 10 in Virginia based on Untappd ratings. But it might not necessarily be what, if you were to ask, I'm not sure how you asked either Facebook or Instagram of who in Virginia you should go see, but like, I know you had a couple other breweries that were on Untappd more highly rated than we were, but the people that get craft beer, or the people that, you know, or more of a casual beer drinker, they know that Crooked Run makes really good beer and offers a great experience.
Yeah, and to add on to what Lee just said, the only thing that really burned me up was like some publication decided to do this, and it got like kind of national attention. It was like the top, I don't know, 20 breweries in every state, and literally all they did was just take the top 20 on Untappd and repost them, but it got a lot of attention.
So lazy.
And like when it came right, but like unfortunately, like a lot of people took it as like, yeah, this must be true. And if you know anything about beer in Virginia and you saw that list, I don't think so. Like, just not at all. But that's just the kind of the way it works. So yeah. But I like it is. I don't mean to rag on it too much. I love Untappd for the utility for like your venue and menus and stuff. and what you can actually, the information you can put out there about your beers. I mean, we can't fit all the shit that we put in the description on a label. So I love that I can actually tell people like, hey, this is made with all Virginia malt and these peaches that we got from this farm and this and that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. From a drinker's perspective, like I don't look at the rating at all when I check it. I'm naturally an optimistic person, so I don't really. My average rating is like 4. Like if I really don't like it, it's like 3.75, type of thing for me. But I just feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm biased because I'm in the podcast. I talk to people. I know the people behind it, and like I can't do what they're doing. So who the fuck am I to go and like rate this beer? Like whatever. I know exactly what you're talking about as well about the Crispies getting lower ratings. 2 anecdotes about that. We have a friends in just outside of on the Quebec side of Ottawa called Sankey and Baron, and they have it so much where they made a T-shirt that looks like baseball. It's got their logo on the breast. On the back it says Pilsner, like the last name, and it says 3.5/5. It's like their thing, which is hilarious. And I just checked as well.
Yep.
The best, in my opinion, the best lager brewery in Ontario is called Godspeed, and they're like Ode to Pilsner Urquell has a 4.06 as an average, but the caveat to that is 566 check-ins. So it's probably not a fair average because just for the sheer volume. So it's like the lager thing is kind of strange. That there's another beer actually I just want to quickly check on that note, just because now you got me thinking. I'm just like, oh yeah, because I've never noticed it because I don't look at what people put. I just put what I put. And if I look at this other one, wow, one of the other best ones in Ontario is only 3.63 and it's got 3,000 check-ins. So I mean that's ridiculous. What would you guys say the percentage of drinkers, and I know this is completely like qualitative, but of your customer base, what's your percentage that are the untapped kind of cats, and what are the percentage are the others, whether it's the people who come for bingo, the taco guy after work, or the grocery store person?
I think the percentage is like maybe 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 are untapped folks. And
okay.
that like really changes. You go from brewery to brewery. I mean, I've been at breweries where like every person is a dude by himself on his phone. And I would say 100%.
Are they white guys with beards?
Yeah, pretty much. For us, like what we've tried to do here, and I think is really the way forward in craft beer right now, is I always felt like the beer garden experience of like drinking beer with your friends in the sunshine, preferably like a half liter or a liter mug of something, super tasty and crushable. That was my favorite beer drinking experience. And that's what we've tried to deliver to customers. And that is as far away as you can get from the beer nerd drinking experience, which is splitting a can or a bottle with like 10 other guys in someone's kitchen. And it like that, having that, experience that is based on like the camaraderie with people and the nice weather, and like the beer is part of it, but it's really not the biggest part. Like that's what I think is something that has lasting power, because if you look at Germany, that's exactly what they've been doing for a very long time. And people have been drinking beer there for millennia, and so US beer is like super young in comparison. But I think, going forward, like beer is this beverage that like I think you want to enjoy in that kind of like just gregarious, fun atmosphere. And I think that the past couple of years have been totally crazy, and I don't think they're indicative of like what I think beer has been for the longest time, which is kind of more what I was saying, like, big mugs of Hefeweizen or lager, and, people you're good friends with, and a nice environment.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. How do you guys feel about the next one? Down for it?
About,
The
I'm
next
sorry.
beer. Sorry, the next beer. In time for the next beer.
Oh yeah,
If you have it down.
totally.
Jake, is there any way you
Can,
could get like a little like
yeah,
a
they
spotlight?
turned off the one set of lights here, so if you guys don't mind,
Take
can
your
I
time.
reposition myself? And also, I need to use the restroom too.
Yeah, mate, go for it. No worries. I'll hold it
Cool.
down in the meantime. So the we're sticking. I feel like the energy that Jake just brought there with the crispy is. Oh shoot. We're gonna keep that running. Do you don't have this exact one, Lee, right?
Glade? No, I don't have that one, but it is fantastic. Just a good um, review that we got. There was a lady. So Jake and I have been bartending in DC to, be have a connection to the community. Make sure that we have a presence there because everyone's always really, happy to talk to the owner of um, any business, whether restaurant, bar, brewery, whatever. And we want to make sure that it's not just a satellite location. There are other Virginia breweries that are in DC, and it is more of that for them. I was bartending one night, and a lady was wasn't sure what she wanted to drink, and I tasted her on the Glade, which is a German-style Pilsner, and she almost fell out of her seat, and she said, "Oh my God, this is fantastic! I grew up in Germany. My father was a brewer in
Wow.
Germany, and he used to bring me, and try to teach me about beer. And this reminds me of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And she lived
Damn.
in the building. We're in the first floor of a residential building, um, and she lived in. So she was over the moon excited that she had access to that. You know what I mean? Like those core memories that you have when you try some food or dessert or a beverage, and it just you have that connection to when you were 6 years old on a Saturday morning watching cartoons. Like, yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Like there's things that they'll never leave, and I think it's even more impressive for someone who grew up in Germany around the archetype for this stuff. Um, you know what? I'm just gonna mute Jake's one just until he's back. There we go. To say that about this beer, which is amazing. It's that's super cool. So this is like okay, so this is a German style pils with Hallertauer and Tettnang 4.2. So it's like traditional, using the noble hops from the region. Smells different to obviously a lot different to the lager. Looks pretty different. Would you say it's different? I guess I should have kept the other one at the same time, but enjoy it.
yeah, yeah. I would definitely say less straw colored, and just fantastic. Has a little bit more malt balanced with the
Oh yeah,
hoppiness. Um, yeah, that's a solid beer right there.
yeah, man. Um, it's still because it's 4.2. So is this? Would you consider this as like a lighter thing of the style at all, or is it just sort of within the boundaries of kind of like a regular?
Yeah, I think it's within the style guidelines, but again, it's sitting in a beer garden in Germany, drinking a liter, of 4.2% beer. Like you're supposed to be drinking this stuff for extended period of time. So lower
Right,
ABV usually is the better.
the better.
And
I love it, man. Oh no, this is super crushable. It's got that nice sort of floral maltiness. The super dry herbal. I guess that's the hops are giving off that. Um, it's like a touch. The sweetness is super mild, so it's not over the top. It's yeah, man. It's exactly what you guys were saying. Like just that sort of like just total crusher. You could drink a liter of this bad boy and wouldn't touch the sides type of thing.
mm,
So I feel like would you say that you're because I recall I don't know if you remember because I remember you hung out with us specifically after the pod last time. I don't think we drank any lagers on the pod. I remember we had that Ambrosia Sour, which was phenomenal. The
Hmm.
Heart and Soul, and there might have been one other one. And afterwards, I remember drinking I think it was a New Zealand Pilsner with the tacos.
Yep.
And that shit was crazy. So, like, and now having two Crispies from you tonight, like, this is exceptional stuff. It truly is. Is this like your thing? Would you say, what if like Crooked? I know that you both were saying you guys do a lot of sours too, but like, what would you say at this point is like your thing? If people would say, "Oh, Crooked Run are the sickest at X," like, what would you guys feel that that's your like lane?
Um, I would say we're still more well known for locally for our fruited sours, but we've always wanted to be known for our lagers. And to Jake's point of like untapped low ratings, even for the big breweries that are known for lagers and making fantastic lagers, is now lagers are more trendy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we would like to be known for more of our lagers. Like our DC location, we have four side pulls because we have
Mm,
four lagers on tap right now. At one
hell
point, I think
yeah.
we had six lagers on tap. We had New Zealand Pilsner, Italian Pilsner, German Pilsner, and American Light Lager. Um,
So good.
and it's just that's what we like to drink. It's nice that the trends have kind of shifted a bit more to that as well. You're seeing a lot more in the bigger publications of lagers are more popular, and that's kind of where the trend's going. So, like, even when we were making hazy IPAs and fruited sours back in 2018, 2019, we the brewers, all of us, we were just drinking lagers. Like that's what we wanted to drink. Like
Hell
fruited
yeah.
sour and movies are good. You can have one, but like if you're gonna sit outside, talk to your friends, coworkers, and talk about whatever, you're drinking a lager just so you can keep that you know that energy going.
I love that. I really feel like my theory was always that that brewers are the reasons that lager is so popular because lager is what brewers want to drink, and brewers are the ones making the beer. So like they're just gonna be like, I want a damn lager, and they just kept making them better and better. And then that Czech program, I think, was the other thing that brought them. Are you familiar with that? The thing where they sent brewers off to the Czech Republic for like a week or so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that the lurker? Lurker does that, right?
It's the I think it's the actual Czech government does it. Like they
Oh,
actually like spearhead it. If I'm not mistaken, you might be correct, and maybe I'm misremembering. But someone told me it was the government. You have to apply, then you get in, and then you go out there for like a week. It's either 1 week or two. I think it might be a week, and then they have an itinerary, and you go around. You meet all the breweries. You meet the equipment manufacturers and stuff. So obviously, it's just basically trying to get generate revenue for the Czech Republic via the beer history side of things. But I think it got a lot of people enamored with Czech beers. And then
mhm.
there was, at least, I can't speak to the States, obviously, but I could speak to definitely Quebec and Ontario there, where a lot of brewers came back from that. And I just feel like we have an influx of Czech lagers of all, whether it's the dark, the amber, the blah, blah, blah. It's, it's the best. It's so cool. I love seeing it. And you guys have four Luke. Luca is the greatest thing on earth. I will go to any brewery that has a Luca over anything else. So you having four in DC? My man.
Yeah, our DC location's great. We have four lurkers and we have two beer engines, and I think 28. We have 30 taps total, including the beer engines.
What's a
So we
beer
want
engine?
it's like a English style
Ah, like a
cask
cask. Okay.
hand pump. Yeah.
Sick.
So we wanted to make sure that we could, as we have done for the 10 years we've been around. I mean, we've made all the different styles. And we're very excited about the styles that we make and how good they are. Wanted to be able to showcase that in the DC location, just like hand pulls or side pulls, regular draft, nitro. It's we can offer everything.
So good, bro.
Because again, as we try to um, be available to craft beer drinkers and non-craft beer drinkers,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know who you're going to get when they come up and say, "I don't know what I want. What should I drink?" And you try it as they're there, and it's your responsibility to put them, with a glass of beer um, that they want to drink and they enjoy. And by having a large variety of different things, you can more easily get someone settled down rather than having 12 IPAs and two sours and a stout. Like we have American light lagers all the way through IPAs, fruited sours, stouts, wheat beers, non-alcoholic beers. In DC, we also have um, batch cocktails, so um, gin and tonics and vodka lemonade, and then we have now the cider and the wine. So it's like you should be able to find something that trips your trigger. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah, man. That's it's super cool. The cocktails you're saying, are they on draft? Are they like draft cocktails?
Yep. So we worked with a local distillery, got their liquor, and then so we do draft cocktails. Just to again in DC, not everyone wants to drink beer, but if you can go to a brewery, if there's a group of people and some people don't like beer, we have an option for them. They
Love it.
like to drink vodka. We got a vodka lemonade. What, whatever, we try to have something for everyone.
I love that, man. That's something, funnily enough. Okay, looks like Jake kicked out. Who'll jump back in a sec. Um, that I noticed in that last trip that breweries were doing that more than ever. Like I saw draft cocktails, I saw wine on draft. Just so many kombucha, non-alcoholic, like just seltzers, whatever it might be, cider, all that stuff. I just felt like breweries are starting, and this is kind of maybe a bit of a segue once Jake gets back as well into sort of the convo about like where beer is going. I just thought it was very self-aware from breweries in the States that were really, and you guys obviously are always ahead of the game with most things, at least in craft beer. And the rest of the world is kind of following behind as far as the new world stuff. And the uh, the fact that so many breweries were doing all of those really cool things and just making a brewery the place. Like if you had, like you said, exactly like you said, if you had a group of friends and I'm directing, I'm like, hey, it's my birthday, I want to go to Crooked Run. And people are like, oh, but I don't drink beer. I'm like, don't worry about it, bro. We got you. You're good. Like, I love that so much. And my girlfriend kind of stopped drinking beer just for caloric reasons recently. So she's really been getting into seltzers. And so many breweries, wherever she's at, have, where I'm at, really, I guess, have seltzers for her. And she's been loving it and now proactively buying seltzers here from breweries who make them. Because one, you want to keep supporting those businesses. But I'm like, they've got 90 calories or something as opposed to, I mean, this isn't so bad, but you drink a hazy IPA, it's double IPA, it's probably 500 calories or something,
Okay.
um, which is kind of crazy. And
And on
you
top
know,
of all the food that you eat with it, yeah,
like
it's
exactly right. It's a meal. I just think it's really cool, and I think it's really dope that you guys are doing that too. Particularly, it's just so forward thinking. I love it.
thanks. Yeah, so it's one of the things that we try to do to think about how we can differentiate ourselves, but also again cast that wide net to not differentiate, diversify our clientele, where one goes up, maybe another goes down, and it all kind of all balances out. You were at our Sterling location. We added a brunch spot and a cocktail bar because
Damn.
for a specific reason. We wanted to make sure that from 9 in the morning until midnight, we had something for everyone at any time, and we just added another food concept. It's grilled cheese and cheesesteaks. So it's like it you really could have a different experience at any different time and during the day. So it's um, since again because we're in a warehouse in Sterling, we don't have a view. We need to have a reason for people to come out and to keep them there.
That's a good point. And that's it, man. I don't know. There's something about that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm comparing to because Canada is not a capitalist country in the truest sense, like the States is, and I feel like that type of like I was gonna say ingenuity. That's not the right word. I guess it's sort of like that's the entrepreneurialism. Like, all right, how can we make sure everybody's I go, yeah, I'm muted now, Jake. You're back. How can we make sure everyone's catered to, and how can we do all that? Like, I feel like it happens here, but not to the same scale. And then the other thing I noticed about the States is almost every brewery. You guys already had 2 locations back in 2019, but I feel like almost every place I went had one like in the nearby city. Like for example, you guys, Alexandria and then DC location, and then if you're in Florida, it'd be in Miami, and then in Fort Lauderdale or something, whatever. Like there was always so much of that. I just thought that's like I don't know. It must be that's what's missing up here, and I think that's probably a symptom of the regulations, really, at the end of the day. But it's just dope. Like breweries are really thinking ahead, man, and just like getting, I don't know, just thinking about ways to, particularly in the last few years when things were crazy and you didn't have guaranteed income and revenue and blah blah blah. So like, you know, I love it. I love hearing all that. It's awesome. It's so cool.
Why do you think in where you are that there aren't breweries that have more than one location? Is so for us in Virginia, we're able to take our beer from Sterling, which is their main production facility, and take it to Leesburg, but we still need to produce 20% of the beer on site in Leesburg. In DC, okay, we don't need to do anything. We can ship all 100% of the beer in. So like it's a pretty low threshold of having multiple satellite locations where you don't have to be brewing at every single location. Is it the same way up where you are? Or
I don't believe so. I think that's what it was. I asked somebody about it because I've obviously since I've come back, we got back early May, so it's only a couple months, but every podcast it tends to come up because I was so blown away by the scale of it, I guess, and the consistency of it. And yeah, people are saying that there's like you can't just make it in one location and take it to another. Like I just don't think it works like that. At least when I met you guys, I lived in Montreal in Quebec, so now I'm in just outside of Toronto in Ontario, and there's different rules in every province, but I believe they're a lot stricter here. Like obviously the whole continent dealt with prohibition, and some of the laws still in a lot of places from like the 20s and stuff, and it's obscene. Quebec only got growlers and cool ships allowed. I think it was 2018, 2019. Like that's how like crazy it is. And only over the pandemic could a brewery, if they weren't like the manufacturing plant license where you not a brew pub, which is more like a restaurant license. If you had the brew pub license, you couldn't sell your own beer to go. Like you could, if I went to a brewery and you had the brew pub license, you couldn't have a fridge for me to pick up a 4-pack or whatever. I had to go to the convenience store down the street to get the same beer that I could have got directly and given the revenue to the company that I wanted to pay. So it's like, it's a little bit more ridiculous, and from what I understand, I'm learning more about lately just because of interest rates and everything. I'm like, I need to fucking understand this because it's like my mortgage went up and like all this crazy shit. So we're like, I need to understand what is going on. And I guess it's just Canada is inherently, I think, is democratic socialism. So it's not the same as a capitalist country. So we have a lot of things here. America's more like, good, go and do whatever you want and good fucking luck. Whereas over here, they're like, well, you get the healthcare and you get all this stuff. And because of that, you're not allowed to do the XXX. So there's like pros and cons to each system. But that's from what I understand, the reason why things were happening.
Right. And then so
guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, I unmuted you just because the music was coming through. So
can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Yeah. This, unfortunately, my whole battery has been burned out, and my external has also been burned out. I'm just using a ton of battery life, so you're gonna lose me. Yeah. So.
Do you have a charger? No charger?
I might have maybe. Yeah, it can't charge it fast enough. I don't know what it is, but it's just isn't charging quick enough to keep up with the rate. So
okay,
I can rejoin if it'll take me about 20 minutes to get home.
We'll be
But,
still going.
I,
We'll be still going for sure.
okay, cool.
Do you want
Let's
to
do
do
that.
that? That's no problem at all, and we can kick it right back in when you get back, because we're only like just an hour.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds
Beauty.
good.
All right. We'll catch you in a sec then, bro.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah, so what I was saying is like still in Virginia, I mean the rules and regulations continue to change, but it's all about lobbying to your politicians and to the government to change the laws. So
Right.
there's lobbyists that push for craft beer, but then there's also the distributors that have lobbyists, and there's the restaurants that have lobbyists that say, well, we don't want, a restaurant doesn't want to allow a brew pub to be able to sell their own beer off site because they can make more money. Why would they go to, they're more like a restaurant, and restaurants are allowed to do that type thing. So like trying to categorize and have concessions and restrictions where, okay, you want to be like this, well, you have to play by the rules that we have to play by. That way it's fair. And, I think craft beer has made a lot of progress over the years of breaking down barriers, updating laws, and being able to move things forward. I mean, obviously, you have to convince the people that make the decision that it's best for the majority, right? And so if they can point to, hey, if you do this, jobs, taxes, revenue, tourism,
Yep.
it Virginia wasn't the first state that allowed manufacturing on site with tasting room with no restaurant. That happened in other smaller states that were a little bit more liberal, more open-minded into doing that, and that's where I think you see like Colorado or Vermont, where they are so much further ahead or known as like craft beer destinations, and there's huge density for all those breweries there. Like myself, I've traveled to Vermont just for craft beer. I've gone to Colorado like 3 times just for craft beer. So like, I don't know many people that do come to Virginia specifically for the craft beer because it's not as densely located as those other areas. But yeah, different states, very similar to the different provinces that you're talking about, have different rules and regulations.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I wonder if, because I went to Virginia specifically for beer. Like I reached out to the tourism office. I'm pretty sure I reached out. I don't think they reached out to me. Like, and to be fair, I didn't know much about Virginia beer, but I think I knew the Vale and maybe someone else. And then I learned about Virginia craft beer, like I told you guys, from the people that I asked, and they told me about you guys and Triple Crossing and wherever else we went down in Virginia Beach, Commonwealth, and all that type of stuff. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it how good it was. It was just such a, but I feel like that was 2019, right? So I feel like even since then, it's got to be like in the beer world, like I feel like it's a pretty renowned place now. I mean, even if you look at Richmond, like Scott's Edition, like with how many the concentration of breweries in one small area is pretty crazy. That's pretty indicative of I mean, you could probably argue that it's a growing scene in the state, but I would say that it's like, I guess it's sort of hard to tell, and maybe it's just for me, I don't know, I'm just biased. I like discovering the new places, and I guess I just heard enough that I was like, oh, we need to go there, to go and check it out, and just being extremely impressed. So it's interesting. I feel like it's maybe the perception's changing as things are going, and maybe part of it's got to do with hype. I would say probably when any beer scene is probably started with hype, and then it comes. Say you take Vermont, like I've been to Vermont. I think I had to do it for my my citizenship. I think I've been 12 times to Vermont. I'm going in 2 weeks for the first time since March 2020. I can't wait. And they probably started on hype from from Alchemist and so on from there. But then now they've solidified it more when it comes to foam and Burlington Beer Co. and like whatever. There's a ton of different breweries out there now that are like that. But then you got Von Trapp, and people will go there. And Von Trapp is this beautiful chalet in Stowe, like in the hills and stuff. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
The Krispies are insane. It's insane. Like and the food is just as great. But I feel like it's almost this like, it's like the hype brings them there. So you could argue that the hype breweries in Virginia bring them there, but they stay for the rest of the stuff, because it's not just about that. The hype will maybe be fleeting or maybe be one part of the journey, but then you're going to want to go to all those other places that are just doing different stuff. And some lager breweries and sour places and maybe whatever, like, and just explore. Once you're in, you're just like, all right, well, what else have they got going on? Because that's the nature of beer. That's why it's the weird industry where if a new brewery opens up next door, you're not mad. I'm like, sick. Well, now there's an extra reason for people to come. They might come here, hop next door, boom.
Right. So I think maybe what that is. So Virginia is, like Jake said, Virginia is almost like New York City, where Northern Virginia, where we are, it's one of the, like, I think Loudoun County is the number 1 or number 2 richest county in the United States. Like, we have quite a mixing bowl. It's mostly because of the government, people working for the government, and the suburban area outside the city.
The Arlington and stuff, or is that like further even?
So Arlington's where more of the younger folks live, and then where we are in Loudoun County, that's where, like, those kids' parents live, and they also work for the government. And
Gotcha.
so, I guess I'm a little biased because no one comes to visit Northern Virginia. Like, Northern Virginia isn't a destination. Like, unlike Vermont, you go there, you go skiing, you go hiking, you do a lot of things. Colorado, hiking, skiing, like, already states that have a tourist destination or a reason for tourists to travel to those locations, I think, do very well with having a large concentration of breweries, because if someone's from out of town, they're going to want to go to as many breweries as they possibly can. It might make it a little bit more difficult for the more local people to sustain, because you can't go to, as a local person, you're not going to go to every single brewery. You're going to kind of find your, like, this is my brewery, I'm going to go to this one place. Yeah, North Carolina, Asheville also, like, it's all very interesting. It's all connected. The reasons that certain areas are known for beer, and I would say Virginia, since in 2019, definitely has some hype breweries, and there's also non-hype breweries, but just across the board, quality has definitely increased over time, and that's really what something that we've tried to focus on is, even during 2020, 2019, 2021, as things were like, the crazy hype was kind of cooling off during that time when we were busy focusing on other things, we could at least focus on making the best possible beer that we could. If people aren't allowed to come in and experience our bartenders and feel that camaraderie, or feel like you're connected to the brewery somehow, we wanted to make sure that we had the best possible product someone was taking home and enjoying at their house. It's always very difficult to make sure that when you brew it on site and you serve it on site, you have the most control. If you brew it and put it in a can or put it in draft and you send it to Florida, like, I couldn't tell you how well that beer was treated. I guarantee it sat warm for probably an extended period of time, because refrigeration trucks are expensive. So, like, the beer got warm, cold, which we know kind of degrades the flavor and the quality of the beer a little bit.
Hmm. So it's like, obviously, yeah, the optimal situation is to come by, but like, how do you get the people to come by?
Right.
I feel like from like, and this goes for everybody. It's like it's easier to maybe romanticize a market that's not your local market. You know,
Hmm.
like I can look at Virginia. I'm like, oh, bro, like when we drove to Florida, we didn't go past your area, or I was gonna give you guys a shout. We went to Richmond, and I met a friend at the Vale and saw their new tap room, and that shit was crazy. Like they had like 4 draft cocktails and draft wines. That was one of the places I was like, oh, okay, like people are really they focusing on this. They had a rest similar-ish to you guys, to be honest. They had a Japanese restaurant inside there,
Oh yeah.
and a big patio and stuff. Because I went to the other one when I saw you in 2019, so I went to the original one. Then I met one of our same friends actually who I met there. He was like, yo, let's go to the new one. I'm like, sweet. And it was dope, and I felt like the quality was better. And I went to Triple Crossing quick because we went there the last time, and I felt like their stuff was, I don't remember anything being even remotely anything less than exceptional, to be honest. But the shit was crazy. So everything that I had on, and I'm talking like cruising through. We didn't stay there. I'm just like, all right, boom, run in, give me that, boom, car next, type of thing, and tried it in cans when we got to the hotel or whatever. But it was really great. But it was easy for me because I had in my head that Virginia is one of the sickest beer regions, or arguably underrated based on what you're saying too. And I get
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it was easier for maybe that. If you come up here, I think here is fucking amazing. But maybe you might come here and you'll have such a wicked experience, and then you'll go back. You're like, oh man, Ontario's craft beer seems ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? Like you might have it in your head, or like Vermont, like you mentioned, which I don't think anyone's incorrect on that. Because if you had a great experience, you had some great conversations, and you start exploring, then it's like. But I guess that the word has to get out a little bit more. And if the thing about you guys though, like people visit DC, so like as far as
Mhm.
like its destination, as opposed to other capital cities, in Australia, Canberra is not the coolest place, and Ottawa here, I think Ottawa's great. They got some wicked breweries too, but a lot of people, particularly Canadians who've been here forever, I just think everywhere's awesome, but some people think it's boring as hell too. But the beer scene's great, whereas DC is this fun ass city. It's like New York or something. It's crazy. Like Georgetown's insane. So you guys are just a quick zip around, like I remember when we were there last time, I think we went to all 3 states just trying to get to Shake Shack. Like you go into 3 states to go to a burger restaurant. It was ridiculous. So like it's such a nothing to just cross a border and go there. So you've got that. Maybe someone's gone and spent 2-3 nights in DC and explored that, and like, well, Alexandria's just over there. And there's Crooked Run's out there, and Aslan's out there, and like a bunch of there's a reason to go out there. So I don't know. That would be maybe being optimistic and thinking that's what I would think. If I'm gonna go to DC, I'm like, well, it's right there, and it's like a cool add-on. You could spend a quick afternoon in a few hours and just check out 2-3 places, and
No,
that's
you're absolutely right, and I think, well, definitely what comes with this being such an affluent area, there are so many restaurants. There is so many, like there's indoor skydiving. There's I couldn't tell you how many shooting ranges we have. There's bowling alleys, restaurants, bars, like all of the cool, fun stuff. It's here. It. There's a lot. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of money, and there's a lot of entertainment.
mm,
So it's pretty neat. And so breweries are kind of just sprinkled, amongst that as well. So you're not only trying to compete with other breweries, um, but you're trying to compete with just getting everyone's attention. You know what I mean? Like, and that's also a very good thing that I think has changed a lot. So in 2018, 2019, when that hype train was really chugging along, and everyone was totally into trying all the new beers and following on Instagram, and it was new and exciting and it was cool. And then, 2020, 2021, 2022, where there was so much unknown, you felt less secure with what was going on in the world, and it was like you constantly got inundated by all these businesses trying to survive. Like everyone was struggling, and so now everyone's trying to how do I get more sales? They're looking in the SEO and paid advertisement and things like that. So as revenues dropped across the board for all retail, they went to kind of focusing on the same avenues of getting people's attention, and it's Facebook, Instagram, targeted ads, things like that. And I mean, I don't know about you, but it can be kind of overwhelming and exhausting just to like open your phone and look at it. Just you want to see something cool that your friend sent you, and you get sucked down this hole of ads and all these just, oh, here's a brewery, they got this, here's a restaurant, this just opened, and it's just like
A lot.
it's a lot. Yeah, everyone's competing for the same headspace.
Never thought of it like that, to be honest, that you are technically competing against everything, all entertainment. I mean, maybe because I'm so like kind of like we were saying before, like a bit of myopic about like if I'm going somewhere, like we're doing a New England trip, we have to be in Montreal at the end of the month, and we like, all right, well, we've always wanted to go to Boston, so we're like, all right, let's go to like Fiden's in Albany, stay in Providence, Rhode Island, go up to Boston, go to Portland, Maine. I haven't been there either, and then to Vermont, which I haven't been back for a few years, and then check out Montreal. So I was like, sick. And all of those places were 100% based on beer, except Providence. That was just for the fuck of it, and I just, why not for one night? Like, but I'm gonna find the beers. I'm gonna check it out. I'm like, oh, maybe there's something cool here. But like, that's what I look for. So I imagine there's probably people who are just, hey, let's go to Alexandria, which we like. The Old Town Alexandria is super cool and
It is
very
cool, yeah.
pretty. It's a nice experience. You don't have to be older, whatever. It's kind of a bit bowler, like you said. I get it, but it's like doable. There's some nice places. You don't have to spend a ton of money. And then maybe they're like, oh, let's go, get out of the Old Town and go do something. Grab check out one of the breweries because they got some good. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's those, like, speaking to the customer base you were talking about before. Like you've got the me and you and Jake type of people who are just like super beer nerds, but then you've got the maybe more casual cats who are just sort of like, going to tack beer on to their other things. So I would imagine that would probably be a chunk of the tourism side of things. And they can discover you through the supermarket. They might have been in DC or whatever, or they drove down to Florida and they were like, oh, you see these pretty ass cans with the cool designs. They're like, oh, these guys are in Virginia. It's on the way up. We're staying in DC. We could just duck over, stuff like that. Like, it's interesting how the word travels, really.
Absolutely, and it's all small. It's really cool that we reconnected because you were on a trip to Key West, and you're like, hey, I know those guys.
I was like, I felt proud. I was like, yo, this is like, it really stood out to me, to the point where I think I went back, and because I knew that if I went back and liked a bunch of your posts, more of your posts would be fed to me in the algorithm, because we have a social media agency, and that's usually how it works. So then I feel like I started seeing your stuff more. And then I'm like, anytime I see it, whether it's you personally or from the brewery, I'm like, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever, I'm liking it and engaging with it intentionally so that I can see more. Not even with the intention of the pod. It's just when we had the 10th anniversary that I was like, oh man, I gotta give Lee a shout, man, and just be like, yo, this is sick. Like 10 years is an achievement. It's a really big achievement. But yeah, it basically was that. It was seeing it on that shelf. I'm like, fuck, this is sick. It was very cool. Just because I didn't know. I didn't really know. I thought it was, I guess I didn't realize the scope of what you were doing. So to me, I was like, oh wow, this is like, but it was the middle of nowhere. You really got to understand how middle of nowhere this was. The beer was there, which was even cooler because they didn't have like that much of a crazy variety. They had a decent amount of beers. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't like crazy. It was like a liquor store. Like 70% of the store was liquor. And then they had a little bit of wine and beer and seltzer and all that stuff at the back. My camera froze. We can still talk though. I'm gonna change the battery. But yeah, it's cool.
So
it's all Lee now. Look at this. Lee's running the pod.
Hey, one of the questions that I think would be interesting to know. So like, we talked to you 4 years ago. how many breweries have you talked to or brewers since then? Like, I'm sure you've talked to some pretty cool people.
Since then, okay, so that was episode 140. Why is mine not working now? Oh, hang on, that's why. It'll. Is it this one? I'm sorry, dude. I don't know why it's not kicking in. I would have say that it's been about. That was episode 147. We finished that thing at 149. So 159. And then we're at 140 of this second series. So push, and then we had some other ones in between. So, yeah, pushing 200.
That's a lot.
It's a decent amount. Here we go. No, that's not it.
And I'm sure you've been drinking a bunch of different breweries, beers. I mean, you're traveling just for beer, so
Yes.
um,
I've had a pretty decent amount of stuff. I've gone pretty hard. I'm the old belly has grown a bit, unfortunately. But yeah.
So, hey, it's a badge of honor. So what's your go-to nowadays? Like, what styles are you into? Are you
That's a cool question.
following the trends? Are you more into lagers now? Or are you what is it for you?
Bit of, I would say, like, if I'm going to walk into a brewery, absolutely, I don't start a drinking session with anything else but a lager. It feels weird to do that. So I would say that would be my favorite thing, and I would prioritize, if I'm going to a brewery, I would prioritize a place with Luca taps, for sure. So if I'm drinking at home, the main stuff I'm buying, because now I'm in Ontario, is a different system to Quebec a little bit. Before they weren't allowed to sell outside of the brewery. You can ship beer, but then they had something called the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, which is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world, which is a strange fact. And they have breweries that get in there, but then it's a whole 6 to 12 month process just to get a beer in there. They mishandle it, kind of what you were saying. Sit in a warm warehouse. They might have New England IPA sitting on this warm ass shelf. Like, so I tried to not purchase from them, but then now independent bottle shops can open, which they weren't allowed before COVID. So like, you and me could just be like, hey, there's a store open here. Let's just rent the store and then just fill it up with beer and wine, and then you're good to go. And also cafes and restaurants can do it. So my favorite cafe close to home here has probably the best fridge in the province, because he goes to all the best breweries in every week and gets all the new shit. So it's fire. So aside from the lagers, I would always go there every week, and I would get there's maybe 3, 4, 5 breweries that I would get a lot of the New England IPAs, and West Coast IPAs are my other new big passion, which is a segue shortly to the next beer. I was very happy to see that. I love West Coast IPAs. It's so when I saw you guys, I was deep in my like give me haze kind of like vibe. Mm-hmm. Definitely like the lagers and everything, and I think maybe that's where I started to get the traction for it. And then now, so Westies for sure. And I usually would I'm loving, I have one night a week where I only drink like basically double figure percentage stouts or barley wines. So like Big Beer Wednesday, I call it, and I do it every week. I can probably usually take like 2 if I only do it at the end of the night, like after dinner. So I got a nice little like foundation. So I'm able to get through those, because now I have a house as opposed to a apartment, and I've got space for like a cellar. So I've got all my stuff there, and I'm able to like, all right, let me get through some of this stuff that's been sitting there for a while. So I've been really like enjoying that as well. So like the big barrel aged stouts and things like that have been super cool. But one thing I'm not doing enough of is the sours and like the barrel aged sours and stuff like that. Right. When I do get an opportunity to do them, I love it, but I don't do it enough. I think the problem is the IPAs, because IPAs have the shelf life. Lagers can sit there for like 6 months and they're fine. The stouts obviously for forever, but yeah, the rest of them are pretty regular. Jake is back. Are we good?
Yes.
Look at that.
Yeah, we're good.
We're back in business. We were just yapping about we were talking about the benefits of all the beauty of Virginia beer and stuff, and we were just talking about what we're all drinking, like the type of styles, the things that we go for. Then what would you guys what would you guys, if you guys are having a drinking session at home, whether it's with friends or by yourself, like what would you guys be drinking? I would, just to catch you up, Jake, I was just saying I drink a lot of lagers, haze, and West Coast IPAs, massive on, which is wicked because we're doing one next, and the big stouts and barley wines. I'm loving them recently, like a newfound appreciation for it. What do you guys rock?
Yeah. Well, I pretty similar. I like everything. Literally every style, as long as it's made well. In the industry, for the past 5 years, you've seen a huge gravitation towards lagers of all types. But I still really like a nicely made hazy IPA. Um, and like I said, like literally anything. But I always like whatever is recent at the brewery because it's the thing that I've drank the least of. So like, you know, um, coming up, we've got a bunch of Oktoberfest beers, including our Schwartz beer. We actually have a really nice pumpkin ale that is something that I think any person that legitimately loves beer would be okay with drinking. Um, and I really like drinking it. It's like basically a kind of malty English ale with a little bit of pumpkin spice, and I'll drink a lot of that next month. Um, and then going into wintertime, we do an Irish stout called Wishing Well. That's a little, classic 4% nitro stout, and I drink that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, Team Pumpkin over here. I fuck with pumpkin heavy. I'm with that. I love it.
Yeah, it's been cool to hate on for a while now, but
Too cool.
I think that,
A little too cool.
right.
They need to get over
A
it.
nice one is, right. Yeah, like if you look at every style that was popular is now hated on. And a lot of people hate on hazy IPAs, but like I said, I still like a nice one.
Hell yeah.
I'm not going to drink like 6 of them in a row, but you know, one or two for sure.
Absolutely. Lee, what do you rock there, man?
Um, I've kind of transitioned a bit. Like I was doing a lot of the new releases that we have coming out of Crooked Run, and we're still cranking, 1, 2, 3 new releases every single week.
Damn.
And like I was saying in the pre-show, um, we're playing a bit more of the hits. Like I wouldn't say we're more of a larger production brewery where like they have their seasonals already set and they make the same thing every single year. But Jake really focused this year and came up with more of a seasonal type of production, but spread out over, I don't know, like 60 different beers, 75 beers or something like that.
Damn.
And so, we'll try to re-release same double IPAs, West Coast IPAs have a good variety, and then sprinkle in there the barrel aged sours, the wines, um, ciders, and seltzers, and things like that. So it's a pretty fun mix. And so I'd be always taking anything that's new, taking that home. And then I found myself for quite a while just reaching to more of the larger breweries like Yingling or any of the larger, even go back to drinking Sam Adams. Sam Adams for me,
Can't
what
go
was
wrong.
that? 2002, no, 2006, drinking Sam Adams, being, blowing my mind with how great that craft beer was. And getting back to that, just because kind of got burnt out on craft beer with how much there was, and very similar to what you're saying is like I have a fridge that's a full stand-up fridge that's dedicated just to beer, and like I have to move the stuff that's been in there for a year, 2 years, just because something I'm looking for. It's save it for special occasions, and I kind of just got to the point where it's like I don't really want to have to think about beer anymore. I just want a beer. I got home from work, just want to make dinner, have a beer or two before getting into the meal, and then I'll have something that's a little bit more special to pair with the food. Um, but I would say more lately, um, uh, getting back more into the stuff that we've been making, really, really enjoying the wines that we've been coming out with. And McKinnon and Brad have been running our native culture wine program, and the stuff is absolutely fantastic. Like I was saying, I get to bartend in DC, and I really like being able to point someone to our low intervention wine and them to try it and just be blown away. And they had no idea that they like lower intervention orange wine, and it's such a refreshing flavor, especially during the summertime.
That's awesome. Maybe we should tap into that. I was going to say, just to talk about the wines and ciders and seltzers. A real quick aside though, when you mention, there's something else I've noticed that you're just going for stuff you don't want to have to think about. I've noticed that it felt like a pendulum swing from COVID, where in the early time everyone was like, "Give me everything! I want all the double IPAs, all the new stuff," and then everyone got broke and fat, and then they're like, "All right, fuck." And the inconsistencies that sometimes comes with all the new beers, and now they just want quality, something that they can rely on. Like, I want to have uh is Glade a regular beer, or regular-ish
Regular-ish, yeah.
ish?
There. So one of the beers I really wish I sent you, Craig, is we do a West Coast Pale Ale called Thunder,
Hell yeah.
and we've been making it since 2013. And I think this is like batch number 4 in the past year, but it's an homage to Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Ooh.
And I started brewing it. I started putting it on the schedule more often because, to your point, like both of you guys, like talking about beer that tastes like beer is like just not too crazy, more easy drinking, and pale ale totally like ticks those boxes. It's like the most unloved style outside of like English pale ale, but um, it's just kind of middle of the road in like a super good way. And we've started brewing it a bunch, and so like nobody's gonna buy gobs of like pale ale cans or German Pils cans to take home the same way they would buy like smoothie sours or something like that. But like the cost of goods sold on it's super low. So like if somebody has a glass of that at our place, that's great. That totally works for us. And like I mean, that's how we started out. Like when we opened in 2013, like at least in Virginia, like the hazy IPA was like a distant gleam in the future. Mostly people were just brewing regular, beer. Um, and yeah, just like, I mean, we make an awesome Hefeweizen. It's a double decocted Hef. It follows all the same production methods as a lot of the great German Hef brewers. It's all can and keg conditioned, naturally carbonated, and stuff like that. Like they're all like 5% or under, and those are beers that you can drink a bunch of. Lee mentioned Allagash White. I mean, that's an amazing beer. Um, just stuff like that, and
Stuff you can keep in the
what's
fridge,
great.
not and know that it's going to be fire. And you
Yeah.
have to think about
Yeah, and
you buy them by the bulk, whether the bulk means 4, 6, 12 plus, and it's just there, and you just go, cool, don't have to worry about it. I love that.
right, and beers like that are like a whole lot less dependent on kind of agricultural products that can vary in quality. Like hazy IPA and fruited beers are really, really dependent on the fruit and hops that you're getting. And we've done smoothie sours that were like the second time really shitty and the exact same recipe just because the fruit puree that we're getting for that year just wasn't good. And hazy IPA, like same kind of deal, is like a huge amount of it is just the quality of the hops. And like there's amazing haze makers out there that like if you get shitty hops, like it's just not going to be that great, whichever one you made. But
True.
you make German Pils, like as long as the grain you're getting is reliably good, and it really should be, because that's something that grain has to be in a certain spec um, for basically conversion, and as long as it can kind of meet that, like I don't want to speak out of turn, because like the maltster that we use like puts so much effort and time into what they do, but like the quality is usually there, so you don't have to worry about a can of something that like has separated out because it's got a ton of fruit puree, or it's just fallen off because it's a hazy IPA that's past the 2-month mark or something.
Mm.
Yeah,
No, that's a good point. Yeah, it's just something that I've noticed. That it's like now that you're both saying all of this, like a few friends have told me. I'm like, I got made some. Lee and I were talking, Jake, before about like just beer destinations and how like Virginia. Well, Lee was thinking that not enough people come to Virginia, but I went to Virginia to see you guys originally because of beer intentionally, and I feel like it's only got better since then. And I got a mate in Vermont, and I'm like, oh, what do you whenever he sends me beer, he sends me a picture. He's drinking Natty Light, or just some like lately like that. I'm just like, are you crazy? Or like a vodka soda or something. And then he's like, recently he's here like Lawson Sip or like Heady or something, like just classics when he has access to all of this crazy shit. And even a guy in a beer region like that is just like, I just want something I can rely on. I've had too many misses rolling the dice on these new beers every week that he just wanted something that he doesn't have to think about and he just knows that it's going to be good. And I feel like that's a sentiment that I'm hearing more and more often, which is really an attestation to the importance of the flagship beer, which I feel like got fronted on heavy because of the things we were talking about earlier with the Untapped folks and just the hype style. How boring is a flagship beer that you can get year round, but this new, the 3 new beers you guys are releasing every week, that's exciting. And I feel like, that tide might be, very slowly turning. At least, people are getting more and more interested. I'm finding that I am too. I would rather buy multiples of my favorite beer. Typically, I want no more than 1, maybe 2 of anything ever. But that's starting to change. And I just think that's an interesting observation that you guys are both saying that, and I'm hearing it more and more often from people from everywhere. So it's like, could be a resurgence of the flagship.
For sure.
We review our sales every single week, and top 5 beers. Within the top 5 beers, there are 3 core beers every week.
Interesting. It says a lot, though.
And they're super dialed at this point. So making,
Yeah.
I think that
And that's
the youngest one at this point is like 6 years old. But Craig, do you you drink cocktails?
I do, yes. Not as often as I would like to, but I do, yeah.
Are you into bourbon?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I never got super into bourbon, but so we sell bourbon at our brewery, and in Virginia, it's like a lottery system, and we've had really good luck with getting some amazing bottles. So we got to try a lot of cool stuff, but like more often than not, I kind of reach for like I just grab a bourbon and soda, right? And it doesn't have to be like Bullet Rye is like totally fine with that, but like my favorite cocktails are like 2 or 3 ingredients, and it just comes down to the fact that like I know I can get those anywhere, or I can make them at home. And yeah, you can have some amazing cocktails that are not in any like bartender's compendium of things anyone would know. And there's people doing incredibly talented stuff out there, but like more often than not, like I just want something really simple like a classic daiquiri or whatever. And it's kind of the same principle for beer. It's just something that like is gonna tick the box and isn't too expensive or crazy. Once you've just tried a million things, like you kind of know what you're in for with most beers. So it's this combination of like there's not a whole lot new out there, and the new stuff that is coming out is like, do you really want to drink like a beer with like soft serve ice cream and bacon? I mean
sometimes,
I don't,
but not all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely got a little bit of pushback recently. Like then that's an interesting point that you made. On this last trip, of all the beers I brought back, of the big ones, I was telling Lee I have like one night of the week where I drink like the double-digit ABV stouts and barley wines, and I've grown to like love it. And what I have learned that I don't love are the pastry stouts as much. Like when I came back from the States, all I brought back in the big beers were just bourbon barrel-aged stouts. That was it. I didn't get anything that were pastry, or maybe 1 or 2. That was it. But out of all the ones I got, all the rest were standard. And I feel like that's in the same sort of like pendulum swing where it's more like the crazy shit. It had its time, and I was like the biggest proponent for innovation, and the most ridiculous beer you got, I want it. But then you know, sometimes now it's coming back and like I'll still try the crazy one, like that's fun, but then cool, what do you got that's reliable and like, you know, maybe a little more chill. I don't need all the birthday cake in a beer all the time. I'll definitely give it a crack. I'm down with it, but like it doesn't like excite me or get me as like I need that type of thing as much as it used to. And I just, maybe we're at a bit of an exhaustion for all of that, and now the consumer's searching for like quality, consistency, reliability.
I really wish I had sent you a bottle of the 10-year anniversary stout that we did. I remember I was saying like we
Yes.
did uh, 4 releases, and so this one was a collab with Barreled Souls, Tripping Animals, and Findak,
Damn.
and it was the best stout that we've ever made. But the thing was, like, all the bottled stouts that we do, like, we don't use any extracts. Like, we do use extracts on some canned stouts. But, like, I think extracts have their time and place. But if we're going to pull out all the stops and make this beer that, like, you know, when you sell a beer by the bottle, your margins are a lot better. So, like, you can spend more money on the ingredients. So you can drop, you know, $400 per barrel on vanilla or whatever. But we did this beer, and it was it's called Sentimental Education, and it was this 4-way collab with we in our ovens. We have a brunch spot, biscuit place, so we have these really badass ovens. We toasted hazelnuts and walnuts, and then we did 3 different kinds of vanilla, Ceylon cinnamon, and maple syrup, and
16%.
a 16.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking at the untapped of it now.
I feel like
God.
I feel like we really nailed this one. Like, I have always felt like our stats have been pretty good and a little bit under the radar, but I just I the BA stuff is not really, like, we do a line of milk stouts that totally fall into the pastry category,
Is that charm?
but yeah. So we do Charm as the lower ABV, like, more sessionable one, and then the really thick boy, like, crazy one is at 10% and finishes
Okay.
at super high gravity. And so, yeah, the barrel aged stuff, though, has a lot more bittering hops.
That's a sentimental education one, just for the people to see.
Yeah,
Sick bottle,
yeah,
man. Wicked,
Yes.
wicked list of breweries too.
yeah. Really, really good stout makers all involved, and just
Oh, we had Heaven Hill
I-
barrels. Fuck, on top of the nuts. Damn. And
yeah, it was really good.
that's like 3 different types of vanilla, and cinnamon, and maple. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's killer. Hell yes. See, that's what I'm saying. But
that
are
is-
you saying that this is not an over? This is like a pastry stout by definition, but not over the top.
yeah. All the ingredients were, like, super balanced, I feel like, in that one, because they had to be, because otherwise you wouldn't taste any of the individual flavors.
Right.
Like, if you hit it with, like, way too much, like, maple syrup, you wouldn't get really anything else. And same with cinnamon. But it was all super balanced. I was really happy with that. I just, we're brewing less and less of those beers these days, but I wanted to give it, like, one kind of final send off, and I wanted to be basically like, hey, here's, like, we've been making really good beers in that vein for a while. Here's what we can do. If you're paying attention, this is awesome. And I don't think we're really going to brew that much stuff like that going forward, because stout is, like, one of the categories that's, like, the most dead of anything.
You think?
Yeah,
Huh.
of all the new styles, like really, really thick, sweet stout, whether it's what you would kind of define as pastry stout or just, like, those high gravity stouts like that, they're not. I mean, it's dead.
Down
but-
in Virginia or across the board? I'm just curious.
I think it's kind of across the board. I mean, there are some breweries that have kind of built their name on it, and I think they'll continue to be sought after by the people that are into them. But I think your typical person that was into beer, like, in the last 5 years, is not really drinking those anymore.
Maybe that's why they do them in such small batches now.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been paying attention, the batch has gotten less and less from everyone doing them, um, and they're not really selling out as much anymore. But uh, like, I still appreciate a really good one. Um, we are axing pastry stouts,
No
100%.
shit.
It's crazy. Like, we went from 2022, the exact same beer on almost the exact same date, like 30 cases in like a day and a half gone, and then the next year a case and a half.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Like, like devil's advocate, could that be the? I mean, I guess it makes no difference because same time of year. It's not the weather, right? Like, it's hot as shit. People aren't really thinking about the winter.
No, we always check into that. I mean, we've been around for 10 years and having access to these metrics, like, that's the first thing we think of is like what else was going on. But no, it's just
Do you, okay,
people
so
are
do you,
not
do you
into
think
them.
it's like because it's so expensive? Like all of the ones I got were pretty, like they weren't cheap, and they weren't all 750 ml bottles. Most of them were like 500 ml bottles.
No, I mean, yeah, that is part of it. But if it was really the expense part, like by the glass, they're not that expensive in the tap room. It's just that, like, if you see people in the industry moving towards lager, then you definitely see people, even casual beer drinkers, moving out of really thick sweet stout. Like, it's all this kind of transition moving away from really, really heavy beer.
Russia bullshit.
Which, like, I think we did some really good ones, and I think we particularly, like, in the last year, brought it all together. But at the same time, like, we do a really, really awesome English porter, and we've been doing this Irish stout for years, and I love both those beers. So,
Yeah.
people are drinking more of those, and that's fine.
Interesting. I find that maybe because I came from Montreal, and that's where the dudes there are just heavy into this stuff. I got a mate out there who I'm like his proxy now, his hookup in Ontario. There's a few breweries that have done some crazy like double barrel, like barley wines and like stout barley wine blends and all this stuff. I swear this guy since I've been here in the last year has spent about $1,000 through me, at least through my local store, of me getting all of them and shipping them out to him in Montreal. And it kind of, to me, doesn't feel like it's dead, but it does feel like it's very niche. But I don't feel like it was ever anything but niche, at least in Canada. Maybe because I don't understand the consumer base down there. So I'm like, that's an interesting comment, to be honest, for me. Like that the point.
Well,
do you guys still
I'll
do
tell
a
you,
lot
man.
of
A lot of
bottle shares?
I avoid it because the last big one I did, which was right before the pandemic, bro, I vomited like projectile. It was the worst shit I ever did. So I'm like, I've done mini ones, but like those people that I'm talking about, when I like these more intense cats who like they live in Montreal and they'll go to Vermont every weekend to go to Foam and Burlington Beer Co to get the latest releases. Like, I don't even understand how these people. They must just have a mortgage and then the rest of their money they spend on beer or something. Like they just are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount that they do, and then they'll have these crazy bottle shares and they trade. Those real like serious people who have checked into everything, 20,000 check-ins type of people. Those are the cats I'm talking about. So maybe they're just like hyper niche. Type of thing.
Well, different markets move at different are at different points right now. So like, I think Northern Virginia has always been kind of jaded when it's come to beer. Like, hype has kind of died around here, like actually years ago. But all I can say is, like, I mean, even outside of market, like I know one brewery that makes very good stouts, and they used to do $30,000 on release day, and it's a shadow of that now. Like, it's just not. It's not the same. Like,
not what it used to be.
People are not.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
that's a really good stat, though. I mean, you've given multiple like quantitative examples. So I mean, that's actually like the first I've heard of this. And if you got not just you guys, but other breweries are telling you the same thing, I feel like that's something to watch. Like that's very unexpected. I didn't expect to hear that. That's pretty wild to me. But it's obviously you're talking from numbers. You're not just saying like, "Oh, dudes aren't buying them." You're like, no. We went from this to this. Like, that's pretty. That's pretty crazy.
Well, it's
Yeah.
just they're in the area in Sterling where we were. 9 months ago, there was 3 breweries in Sterling. Now there's only one.
Really?
That's all.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's got that crazy. I mean, that's the next like, yeah, the other sort of convo as far as like what's happening as on a macro scale with beer and stuff. And we'll talk about that offline a little bit, like about like it's in a crazy space right now, and the best ones are going to be the ones that are going to be out there. Maybe it's we're in a bit of a downsizing, whether it's
Mhm.
styles. You talk, maybe something like that. Like pastry stouts are in this economy, which it's just such a funny term, but I use it all the time now. Like, who the fuck is buying $25-$30 and $25-$30 US bottles? Even in Canada, we add 30% to that. Like
Mm.
that we pay when I'm down there. That's a lot of money. Like that's a decent bottle, a pretty good bottle of wine. And you're rolling the dice on a one-off, barrel aged stout that could be whack because it could be poorly blended or it could be not carbonated and the thing's fucked up because that's what happens. Like maybe people aren't willing to risk
That's
it that much.
yeah. That's why I think that what I felt over the past couple of years is you'll see people still spend that kind of money because like beer has always been cheap in comparison to liquor or wine. I mean, no matter what, it's still super cheap. Like there's obviously bottles of liquor that go for thousands of dollars, and at this point, I don't think there's any beer that really does that anymore. Um,
Don't think
but
so.
yeah, so there's definitely room for beer that costs way more than like $1 an ounce. But it's just like people are going to look towards the true masters of whatever specialist style they're seeking out that warrants that kind of like nobody's going to spend that kind of money on like a pilsner because like there's no reason for it to cost that much, you know.
Good
But
point.
if there's like just like a triple barrel aged barley wine with vanilla, people may continue to pay that kind of money because they know that this brewery like never lets them down. It's always really good, you know. But
So it'll become
what
more
you had over
niche.
the last right, and I think of breweries like I'll give you some examples like Angry Chair, who as far as I know kind of invented pastry stout. Like I think people will still be into what they do because like they always deliver on that,
Gotcha.
like they've been doing it for a long time. They're very very good at it, and like certain hazy IPAs out there, right? Like Parish Ghost in the Machine, incredible beer, incredible. I've never had the double dry hop version, but I'm sure it's really really good. Like people will be really into that. Just like you see, like people are still super into Heady Topper and
Triple
Pliny the
Sunshine.
Elder and
Oh yeah, plenty.
and all the other kind of benchmark styles like that because they just know it's going to be good. Um, but yeah, outside of like a few makers of stuff like that, I do think that you're gonna see more of like a leveling of craft beer where you see like people they're not looking to their local craft brewery to deliver on a $30 a, a bottle, pastry stout, you know?
Right. They're really
Um,
going to the people who are known for it, and they're not going to roll the dice like they used to.
yeah, and they're just gonna want to like. There's still definitely room for your local brewery that makes good beer, but they just want to go there to have like a regular beer and like not the people that are into it. Because if you go back like 5 years ago, if you were putting fruit and vanilla in a sour, you could sell it no matter who your name was
Mm,
at all, and it could be kind of shit, but it didn't really matter. Like there weren't enough people putting out those styles, and they were so new that people
yeah.
were like fanatical about them. But it's just not the case anymore. So
Mm,
yeah, I mean, beer quality is super important nowadays, but it's this combination of like beer quality and also like what are you brewing, how do you market it, and what kind of experience are you offering? Because like as anyone in the wine world will tell you, like if you're in Napa, like drinking a glass of cab next to a cliff next to a fire outdoor fire pit, like that's a whole different story than just like cracking open the bottle at home. And that that kind of experience creates those fond memories that carry over to the brand.
Hmm.
And I mean, just kind of continuing this, like you look at breweries like Treehouse that have invested all this money in like these beautiful campuses, like that's what they're doing. Like there's many people that can brew the beers that built Treehouse at this point. But like if you go there, like it's a beautiful experience and you feel like, hey, this was worth it, you know?
Mm-mm. Interesting. I'm going there not this weekend, next weekend. And I'm like, I had to watch a YouTube video to learn how to go there. It was fucking insane. And I asked
Yeah.
my boy, and he was like, my friend is a brewer, Mortalis in Rochester, and he was like, he just went there this week. I was like, oh, where'd you go? And he went to the Charlton one. And he's like, man, they told me they get like 5,000 people on an average Sunday. And he had to get a shuttle bus from the lower car park. I'm like, my God, I just want to get a pint and whatever, a few 4-packs, dude. Like, I'm not, it's like, it just sounds like a whole thing. I didn't realize the scope of what they're doing, which is crazy. I guess that's a whole
It's
outlier.
It is certainly
no, I
impressive.
mean,
Yeah.
if you can get to that kind of status, like, so I got to go to Europe for the first time like 2 months ago, and I went to Cantillon, and
Yeah.
John Roy, who's the master blender there, wasn't there at the time, but I got to meet his dad, Jean Pierre, who's like he's 80 years old, doesn't speak a lot of English, but our friend translated, and he said like Cantillon was on the brink of bankruptcy
I heard that.
in the 70s, and he basically like turned it around and made it a tourist destination to the point where like anyone who's into beer goes to Cantillon when they're in Belgium. Like of all the breweries you're going to go to, like that's
No
way
question.
up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and well, yeah, and the other guys make great stuff too, but they don't have the same thing going on. Like you might go to the other ones, but you're probably going to Cantillon. And he turned that around for them. And if you see kind of what's going on in the US, like it's the same deal. Like you if you can create that kind of thing where it's like, hey, you're in Massachusetts, you're gonna go to this brewery. You know, that is amazing. And that's the beer is fantastic, no doubt, but like it doesn't matter how many other people are making like the same thing. People want to go there because they want that experience.
Yeah, experience is kind of everything. Is it cool? I wanna hit pause on this. I need to hit the bathroom real quick, and then I want to get into that Westie, and we'll just keep this cruising. Is that cool? You can give me like 30 seconds. I'll pause it so I won't leave you guys live. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing.
Beautiful. We'll be back in a sec. Alrighty. Pee break. Loving it. So next beer, because we hyping up all of this West Coast. I remember I was actually really excited when I saw this in the pack because I saw you guys post this, and I was super amped. So this is White Oak Scorpion. So this is a West Coast with aged on white oak. Which are the hops in this one, by the way?
That is Columbus, Chinook, and Centennial. So all the classic C hops.
Yeah, let's go. I'm gonna write that down. Columbus, Chinook, Centennial. Do you guys do a lot of West Coast IPAs?
Yeah, so we always have at least one on tap, and that's kind of where this idea started.
Okay.
So since 2013, we've been brewing this beer called Storm. Storm, I describe it as like a contemporary West Coast IPA, which is like not at all like the 100 IBU, West Coast IPAs of the past. It's like a little bit more mellow. Its water chem is like not New England IPA, but it's like softer water. And like a 60 IBU West Coast. But we wanted to do something that was like much more like old school West Coast IPA.
Okay.
More hops, more bitterness, and some crystal malt. And so that beer is Scorpion. And we kind of alternate between both those beers. But the white oak version, basically like one of our guys was like, hey, we should brew something like White Oak High Lie.
Okay.
And White Oak High Life is an awesome beer, but you don't really see that around that much. I mean, you used to see it sometimes on tap years ago, but one off from Cigar City off of their legendary IPA. And so we like brewing these beers that are, like I said, with the other one I was talking about, Thunder, the kind of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale
Yes.
homage, like tributes to other breweries that are making awesome beer. Just like this is our kind of stab at doing something like that. And White Oak Scorpion is definitely different than Highlight. Highlight does not strike me as an IPA that has a lot of crystal malt. It doesn't have that kind of caramely thing going on, but this is more like your classic like Two Hearted esque West Coast IPA. But then you age it on, and this is a key difference. Is like I've never had a barrel aged IPA that I liked. Um, Honestly, they've always been nasty. But this isn't barrel aged. We just take oak spirals and we recirculate the beer on it right before dry hopping, and it's like a max 2-day process, and it's pretty cool because like when when it first hits the oak, the aroma is like furniture store in like a really good way.
Okay.
But then it mellows out, and it just gives it this like really really, oak has like a chemical called vanillin, and there's a whole host of other chemicals, but like it just has this soft kind of round feel to it that smooths out some of the kind of bitter edges. And like we only make it like once or twice a year, but it's just a pretty badass beer, and I really love it. A select group of customers love it too. It's cool.
Hell yeah. I'm excited. Boys, cheers.
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 Get that in you. Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so the oak side, I see what you mean about the two-hearted. Because like I feel like Highlight is a little more darker. Because I definitely drank both of them a bunch in Florida just because they were like nice, easy go-tos that weren't, you have to think too much about them. This is definitely giving me that, it's like sort of bright, not over the top piney or resiny, but nice and sort of like balanced in there. So the oak, what is that giving the beer, say, differentiating it from like the original one?
Yeah, so to really get it, you'd have to try both of them side by side. But basically, what it does is, number one, it makes it less bitter, and number two, it's kind of hard to, if you try to, you know what I'm talking about. But it gives it this kind of rounder feel to it, where
Okay.
it doesn't have as much like bite.
I can get that.
I mean,
see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, like technically the IBUs are the same, and there's no sugar being added to like balance the bitterness, but it just like
Okay.
smooths it out, and it makes like just a not necessarily easier drinking because it has its own kind of oaky flavor, but it's like just this, I guess, more mellow version of a very bitter West Coast IPA.
I can see exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm even some sort of like light, sort of honey-ish vibes
Yes, 100%.
coming through, which kind of like, okay, because like I've had beers with the oak spirals before. I feel like they're not the most common thing in the world, but they seem like a sick like alternative to throwing something in a barrel where like there's much less that can go wrong by putting the spirals in to get almost the same outcome as putting it in a barrel. But then the barrel, you've got bugs and blah 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 that can mess the whole thing up.
Right, and every barrel aged IPA that I've had has been oxidized.
Right.
And I feel like that's inevitable when you put beer in a barrel. Actually, I don't feel like that. It is absolutely inevitable.
Right.
So there's no sense in oxidizing something that is the most oxidation prone beer out there.
Right.
Like IPA gets a little bit of oxygen, it's wrecked. So
yeah, that's
actually
really
we tried a barrel aged Pilsner, and that sucked too.
okay.
Just picked up the same oxygen you would get barrel aging any beer, but it's so noticeable. Whereas in a stout or barley wine, like they all get oxidized. That's part of the character.
Right.
Because it gives you that kind of sherry like quality to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have had some really good barrel aged pilsners, or at least slightly aged ones, but I feel like I don't know, maybe they're blending it or something as well. it could be a bit of that. Actually, one of the ones I saw, this brewery in Montreal did it, and they was talking about they won awards for it, but they did mention it was blended. I guess often they maybe blend it with some young beer as well, and like, you know.
Was it barrel aged or foeder aged?
I think they said it was barrel aged, but the copy was in French, so it might have been foeder. They
So
have a foeder.
obviously, plenty of people are doing foeder aged lagers, but the difference is like the surface area exposed to oxygen is like a lot lower in a foeder.
Gotcha.
And also like foeders generally are not like, they're a little bit newer and nicer typically than most barrels are getting, which have already been typically used or
beat up a bit.
something. But
yeah.
Either
way, though, I love this whole concept. It's great, man. This is like, it's exactly as you described, like super rounded. Still got a bit of that sweetness, the malty sweetness at 7% that you would expect, but the bite is reduced. And I feel like, because coming back, we were talking about gateways obviously earlier. I feel like most people, well, not most, the people that say, oh, IPAs are too bitter, this is what they're talking about. They're not talking about New England, but it's almost like the characteristics in this beer of a West Coast are there without that over the top side of it. It's almost like just a more mellow version of the whole thing, so that it could give people like a less scary, like tasting experience if they're maybe newer to it and intimidated or have had a bad experience in the past. Because West Coast are a bit of an quiet taste, I would say. This is great, boys.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. I think that's exactly correct. But if you tried the non-oak version, it's substantially more better.
Okay, so it's a little more intense. This is cool. It's like a really fun concept. And once again, though, like, I love that. I really appreciate the selections too. I like that they're two completely different lagers, and like you kind of hit me in my, like I was talking when we were talking before as you came back in, Jake, about the styles I'm drinking more. These are two of the main styles that I'm really loving right now, the West Coasts, and because I feel like you just need to balance out the haze. It makes you appreciate the haze more if you have like a West Coast alongside it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's a completely different, the whole different experience. But so the other thing I definitely want to make sure we cover tonight is obviously the new brewery in DC, but you got the wine, the cider, and the seltzer that you guys have expanded into to make it like a fermentation company, which is such a smart move. So yeah, talk us through that, man. Like that's great. What's going on with that, guys? Whoever wants to take it. like Jake said, Lee, talk about it, buddy. Speak to it.
So the fermentation side of it. What's fun about that is we started messing around during COVID into making wine. Did small batches of that, and low intervention style. Can't call it natural wine because it's not organic grapes, but used local Virginia grown grapes. And again, McKinnon and Brad in the Native Culture program came up with some pretty good stuff. And like, it actually reminded me of the first time I homebrewed beer, I don't know, 15 years ago, and went through the process, tried it, and it didn't suck. And it's like, oh, cool. Let's invest a little bit more into this, and like we can actually make this happen. And it's grown into last year's production. I think we had McKinnon and Brad did like 8 different varietals of wine. Cider's been pretty fun too. Very similar, low intervention. Just you take the apples, you crush them, ferment it, bottle it. There you go.
And you're doing all of that in house too. Like you're actually making the cider. You're getting the apples and making the cider.
Yep. And they're pretty fun. One of the anniversary beers that one of the anniversary releases that we ended up doing, Jake did a cider, and that had Jake had strawberries and what else with it?
So strawberries that underwent carbonic maceration.
Okay.
And then we did a touch of Tahitian vanilla and ginger on top of an apple variety called Gold Rush, which is a super bright and kind of zippy apple that you can use like 100% Gold Rush and make great cider. And that was a collab with Graft, Dissolver and Lost Generation out of DC.
Okay, is Dissolver from like North Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah, Asheville,
They're
but
from Asheville.
they've got a spot opening up in I believe Raleigh pretty
Okay,
soon.
they're on my list. We went on the way back through Asheville and Charlotte, and I didn't know it was that fire. That's sick. I didn't get to go to many places, but okay, that's sick, man. And
Yeah.
like,
So that
so doing collabs with breweries with cider, is it just did they make it too, all those ones you mentioned, or did they just want to contribute to the collab?
Yeah, so Graft is cider maker that has been doing super cool stuff for a long time, and then Dissolver got into cider and wine about the same time that we did, and we're kind of like I feel like breweries that are like kindred spirits. Um,
Like gravitate.
Dissolver and Speciation are the two closest breweries to like what we do.
Is Speciation
Um,
from Michigan?
yeah,
Okay, I know the guys. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So like we're doing very very similar types of exploration, and
Very cool.
so their stuff is excellent. And then Lost Generation, so they don't make cider, but one of their brewers used to work for us, and he was our cider maker. So
Ah,
naturally, like we wanted to reach out to him and be like, "Hey, man, do you want to be involved in making this cider?" Um, and
very cool.
yeah, we did that over the last year, and then released it for the anniversary, and it turned out great.
That's awesome.
Probably the best cider we've made.
Hell
it's
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
So like,
So
what? Yeah, where did all this come from? I guess like I mean, was it just like you said during COVID? But like, was it just to like on a whim, or just to like, hey, let's try something different, or hey, we've got more spare time, let's do some stuff we've always wanted to do?
I think a little bit of the spare time, our head brewer McKinnon again had interest in making wine, which since 2020 he's really gotten into. He's done some training. He's gone to Portugal,
Oh
um,
wow.
and like he's super into wine, and his knowledge has grown immensely. And he's visited local wineries in Virginia and picked their brains and talked to them about what we're doing. And I don't Northern Virginia is known for its wine, whether good or bad. But they definitely have a wine tourism through the area. And McKinnon's talked to um, folks that grow their own and make their own, and he's connected with a winery that's makes very good grows very good grapes and also makes very good wine, and tried to learn from them and talk and kind of echo chamber off of different techniques and methods, and diving into something that really no one in our area has been doing. And
Cool.
natural wine is kind of a niche, trendy um, um, sub market of the wine. But what's really fun is when we opened up DC, we were able to open up with a extremely beautiful 3,000 square foot uh, space that has uh, 20-foot tall ceilings, very airy, natural light, um, nice stone countertops with 30 taps, four looper side pulls, two beer engines, um, and with the name Crooked Run Fermentation. And so we've been in DC distributing beer and doing tap takeovers and beer dinners there. Um, no, I wouldn't say it was a huge presence, but going there with this beautiful new brand with offering wine, cider, seltzer, in addition to the beer, it really, and this beautiful space, I think it really helped us stand out. And I'm very proud of what we have to offer because DC is very receptive to London Ridge and wine. And so you don't, in Northern Virginia, you have to educate. And then before you can sell in DC, it was a lot easier. You don't have to do the education. You just have to tell people, what you have, and they'd be more interested in trying it. So
Hmm.
the same with the cider. Like people get that breweries can have more than just beer in DC. So it's a very cool market that we're in. And again, like I was saying, Jake and I bartend there, and it's a lot of fun to get back to our roots with, being behind the bar, connecting with customers, pouring beer, wine, whatever it is, and being able to, you know, specifically for Jake, like have an idea, take an idea, brew the beer slash wine, and then be on the other side of the counter as he hands it to a customer and like see that kind of full circle. It's been a very difficult 10 years of growth and dealing with the pandemic and things like that, and being able to see the smile on people's faces. You hand them a glass of beer that they haven't had before. You get them into a sour beer that they really enjoy. It brings it home to why you do this, why we do this, and it's a wonderful feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So exactly what he's talking about, like connecting with the customer and like doing the final point of sale. Usually, like if you're involved in production, like you're not front of house, and you're not really like is kind of just the sad state of things. But like you, a lot of times, if you're back of house, you have frustration with the customer and like how they perceive your product and stuff. But I think it's really important to actually get out there and like serve the beer or wine to the customer and get their feedback and connect with them. And when we opened, Lee and I did like all the bartending, all of it. We hired our first bartender for Sundays after like 6 months of being open. And so, like, to his point, I was super happy. Like 2 months ago, there was a customer who she expressed interest in the wine. I said, "Do you like natural wine?" And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "I'm interested in your orange wine." So if you're unaware, orange wine is just skin contact Chardonnay. No oranges involved. It's just like it gets a darker color from having contact with the grape skins. And I told her that, and she said, "Is it good?" And I said, "Do you like Georgian, like the country Georgia? Do you like Georgian orange wine?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Then you're going to like this a lot." And I poured some for her, and she said, "This is great. I'll take a whole bottle." And that makes me feel super happy because, when people get what we're trying to do, which is not all the time, and like not everybody's like that into analyzing what they drink, but when you get somebody that like, sees what you're putting out and is giving you nice feedback, it's just the best feeling.
Totally, man. And I think it's even cooler for you guys that you're getting this feedback on a product that you're not known for primarily. Like this is your like secondary venture as far as the wine and cider seltzer and stuff. Like, you're a brewery, but you're also doing all of this stuff. So for people to react that positively to the newer stuff must be even cooler, which is like I applaud you guys so much for doing this. It's funny that you mentioned the other breweries that were doing winery. The first time I saw it was at Burial in Asheville, and they made their own wine. And my girlfriend, I was telling Lee while you were transiting, Jake, that my girlfriend is sort of more chilled on drinking beer, and obviously I'm dragging her to breweries, so she's been drinking a lot of seltzers and other stuff. And the breweries in the States were so welcoming to all other palates for different things, and I like that Burial was the first one I saw that made their own wine. So it's interesting that you named a bunch of others that did the same thing. So that sounds like it's including you guys, which sounds like it's a bit of I guess a sort of somewhat of a trend, which I think is a fantastic trend because it's taking the brewing business to the fermentation business, all things fermentation, hence the name change for you guys. What are the aspirations that you guys have for the new categories? Wine, seltzer, and cider.
Well, so the main thing is like, obviously, like we have a lot to learn from other winemakers, but we also have some stuff that we know how to do. So when we started making wine, the impetus was like we all enjoy natural wine, and we also had been already fermenting a lot of fruit, not grapes, but a lot of different fruit to blend into mixed ferment beers. So we know a lot of fermentation techniques and kind of more of the science. Winemaking obviously can get super scientific, but a lot of it is based on tradition. Um, and do think that like we brought some stuff to the table. Like we know, I'll just give an example, right? This is a really broad example. So many winemakers talk about terroir and the effects on the wine, but they won't admit that part of that is that the wine isn't 100% clean. And what I mean by that is like they don't want to admit that like there's Brettanomyces in their wine.
Right.
And Brett is like, that's seen as a major flaw in wine. And I mean, if you taste like some Bordeaux's and some other wines, like they're not clean. And I mean, when we've looked at our clean beers that have been in barrels, we found tons of Brett cells. Now they were inactive because the beer was such high ABV, and had already been fermented out when it went in the barrel. But like, if you put anything in wood, you are getting some wild yeast, and you may be getting some bacteria too. The thing is, like, we know how to deal with that stuff because we've been working with it for a long time.
Right.
And we know how to coax some of those good flavors, because the reason why, like, Brett, this is my opinion, but it has a bad rap in wine and beer. Can be really bad when it shows up, if it's unwanted. But if it's not treated right, you get some really nasty flavors. But if it is treated right and you know what you're working with, you can get these amazing flavors where like you get just crazy like mango or starfruit flavors, kind of raspberry jam, stuff like that. And like, because we're doing all lower intervention wine, like we want that stuff. Now, if you give it to somebody that's like just a, you know, 30 years of drinking, big oaky Chardonnays and jammy cabs, they're not going to like it.
Right.
And because it's so radically different. My dad is one of those people. I gave him, for his birthday 2 years ago, I gave him this bottle of wine from an incredible natural winemaker. It's two guys. They're called Yeti and the Coconut, and their stuff is just amazing. And I gave him a bottle for his birthday. I asked him, maybe a month later, what'd you think of that? And he was like, and I said, did you notice the like cherry Gatorade flavor to it? And he's like, yeah, didn't really like that. And to me, that was like the point of it. But if you are, used to just very traditional, like Wine Spectator, James Suckling, highly rated wine, like you're not gonna like that.
Gotcha. So it's just a different approach. But really, though, my immediate thought, without obviously seeing or trying it, was that it would probably speak to more of the people who are coming there for the beer, because I don't know, like if I'm going there for beer, I'm ready for an exploration. I'm ready for a journey. I'm ready. You got 30 taps. That is so crazy. Like at the DC, like if I'm coming in there, I want to try a bunch of stuff, and I feel like my argument, maybe you guys can speak to it more, but like, would a beer consumer be more inclined to be like, whoa, reminds me of a farmhouse with raspberries and cherries or something, like, like, is that kind of more what it is? And maybe, and the natural, obviously aside from natural wine people, which is a whole subset, but would you say the beer consumer is a little more open to like the newer, more unique stuff?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, because like that has been something that's been really, really nice about doing this.
Hell yeah.
Is like exactly what you said. Like somebody who drinks mixed firm sour beer is totally down with this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to notice the same flavors that they like in those wines.
Right.
I mean, some of these wines have acidity to them, and you're going to get that when you have lactobacillus and other stuff acting on the wine. And as long as it's not unpleasant, it can be really nice.
Yeah.
It can make something that's crisper and just has a greater depth of flavor. And then cider, absolutely, man. So there was a cider maker in Maryland. It's actually, I brought up Graft before. So it's a brother and sister that are the owners and operators of Graft, and uh, their dad had a cidery called Millstone, and Lee and I loved Millstone stuff back in the day, and it was a mixed firm cider, and it was like if you closed your eyes, you thought it was sour beer.
Hell yeah.
It's crazy stuff, and the anniversary cider that we were talking about, and some of the other ones we've done, like it was a dead ringer for the stuff they used to make. So super cool doing that, and love seeing people into it. But yeah, it definitely takes somebody who's more open-minded and adventurous to be down with that.
The enjoyment that you guys get out of it, though, it seems like it's like I'm just sort of like trying to look at it from you guys' perspective, being a successful brewery for 10 years. Like, and by the way, congrats on 10 years. Like, that is, I probably interviewed a half a dozen breweries who have been open for that long. And I'm probably exaggerating now I think about it. Like, it's really not that common. Like, that is a huge achievement in and of itself. So I can imagine for you guys, like, moving into something fun and different, yet like aligned, like cider, wine, seltzers, must be like, it almost like, is it like reinvigorating like the passion? Obviously you haven't lost any passion for beer. I can tell both of you are super like, this is your shit, this is your livelihood. But like, I guess it's like makes it like fun again, eh? Because it's new and you're discovering and you're making mistakes and then fixing it and then getting these new consumers, and then it must just make this whole journey much more fun.
Yes. What has happened in the last 5 years, 4 years, as Jake and I have, moved away from being so involved in, like, in 2013, Jake and Jake and I used to make the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had a full-time job, and I would come in on Saturday and Sunday, and we would do projects while we're making a big batch of beer and a small batch of beer, and we'd be hustling and doing all that. And it's a lot of fun when you got your hands in it and you're very involved. And as the company grew, we got less attached to doing the direct brewing of the beer, and more of the operation of the business. And then I mean, we've talked about the pandemic so much tonight, but it's the pandemic really forced us to driving the ship, with having the 40 employees, and I think we're up to like 60, 70 employees now,
Damn.
and we
That's so
continue.
cool.
We have the livelihood of so many people. That we have to consider when we make decisions nowadays. It's it's different, and it's difficult, and it's very stressful. But being behind the bar and connecting with customers, again, just gives you that reassurance of, like, you're doing the right thing. You're doing what you like to do, and making people happy with the products that you make, the things that you enjoy to drink, you get to share, and to see the smile on the people's face when they're tried orange wine for the first time, because they went on a whim to come in, and now they have a new style of wine that they've just discovered because of us. Like, it's very cool. You're connecting with humans. Isn't that what
Yeah,
it's all about?
mate, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's really what everyone's going there for. And like, I feel like some of the friendliest people ever are in breweries. I feel like you want to, particularly when it's, you boys are both front facing at the DC location, knowing that people could come in and like actually speak directly to the owner and get the story behind every product and the company itself and so on and so forth. And like, all of that is a part of the experience that people are looking for, I think. And I can't remember, we were touching on it earlier about experience is really what it's all about now. Like, cool, I can buy the cans in damn near Key West, but like there's probably nothing that's going to touch the experience of going into one of the three spaces and actually like drinking from there and eating the food and like taking in the vibes and stuff. And that's the thing I've loved the most since everything opened back up. Like I was saying, Canada was a little wild, so we didn't get to do stuff for a while. So it's only been like 18 months for me of doing stuff again, and it's taken a bit to get back into the habit. Like life's been crazy, but it's been like I've been loving it, getting back out, exploring, going to a tap room, just looking around, like, yo man, look at these people vibing, like everything's great. Like it's really cool. And I think it sort of speaks to like something that we want to touch on earlier, like, you know, like you guys obviously are seeing where beer is going. And I feel like I was saying to you guys off camera that we did a podcast earlier in the year where we were talking about the future of craft beer, and or at least craft breweries. And it seems like to me what you guys are doing is exactly what essentially every brewery probably should be doing, where it's almost like a fail safe where you got the beer covered, you got wine, you got seltzer, you got cider, you got all the, you know, the multiple location experience, the food, like the whole thing. And just sort of like, it's almost like hedging your bets but not letting anything slide in the future, to make sure that you're a fermentation business. Like you guys changed the name of your company for that reason, which I think is fantastic. Is I imagine that's where you guys see this going. Like basically what the summary of what I'm getting at is that the articles and news stories that I watched for our podcast just to see what people were saying were that breweries need to be sort of in the, essentially they didn't use that word, but like fermentation business. Like they need to be in the beverage business where you're making kombucha, non-alcoholic beer, seltzers, and probably non-alcoholic, the plus alcoholic version, and cider and wine and beer and blah blah blah. Like basically you're making just liquid. Where do you guys see the future of craft breweries at this particular point, whether it's in Virginia or, you know, nationally, globally?
So I've been thinking a lot about this over the last 2 days, because there's an article in Pace Magazine that came out that's pretty good that talked about what's going on in craft beer right now.
Okay.
And I think it was very, very well written. But I basically, I don't think it's so much about like necessarily like making wine or cider or whatever. Everybody's got to find their niche, no matter who you are. And if your niche is like you are, you know, the end all be all of hazy IPAs, that can really work for you.
Right.
But there can't be too many people out there like that. Same for every style. You can be an incredible farm brewery. You can be just a really, really great neighborhood brewery. You can be a brewery that's almost like a dive bar. There's many different ways to pay the bills and to, you know, keep a customer base. But for us, we've been around for 10 years, and now, you know, we're about to renew a lease for another 10 years. So we're thinking like, you know, how are we going to be around for another decade? When we started this, you know, there was limitless possibilities. I never thought, like, all I wanted to do when we opened was make an IPA as good as Ballast Point Sculpin. And I thought Whistler 12 was, like, the best beer in the world. And I've met those goals of making beer, like, you know, same, you know, ballpark quality levels and stuff. So that's been super cool. But I don't think any small breweries are striking it rich. And they're not going to. So what do you do to last and be something that's like, you know, a positive thing in people's lives, and you can pay all your bills and take care of your employees and all these other things? And I think it just really comes down to like, what do you do to just be attractive to the right group of people? And some of that's marketing, some of that's like, I'm not discounting beer quality, but like, I feel like that's a given at this point. Like, you should be making good beer, obviously, but you need to be doing a host of other things. And for us, like, yeah, I mean, it's super cool that we make cider now, and our cider's really freaking good. Like, I love cider. Drank a lot of cider. I can give our cider to somebody that drinks Angry Orchard, and they're probably going to be okay with it because it's just so approachable, even though it's mixed from cider. Um, but that's not necessarily the solution to everybody. Like,
Right.
you've got to figure it out. You can be a brewery that makes nothing but, English style beers and, does a ton of cask stuff, and you find your niche. But for us, like, we have always been like community focused, and we make good beer and we make a variety of beers and we deliver them in a fun environment. And I think that's worked for us, and we're going to keep doing that. Um, for the breweries that are not doing those things, there might be a tough road ahead. Um, I think that everybody should kind of evaluate like why they got into this. Lee and I have poured our heart and soul into this. Um, it is our lives, and it's been that way for a long time. We have a brewery opening up like a stone's throw away. Huge facility. They're putting a ton of money into it, and I I don't really know the owner, but I don't know whether he's that type of person. I talked to my friend about this a year ago. If you're getting into this industry now and you haven't planned a vacation around craft beer, I don't think you're really cut out for it. Like, if you haven't gone somewhere and said, these are the breweries I'm going to hit, if you don't have a clear idea of where your beer is going to be sold, whether it's distribution or your tap room or whatever, like, I I just don't see it. And, I'm not trying to be, defensive or pessimistic. It's just, it's the truth. Like, you got to figure out who you're going to be to what people. Um, and, I used to keep a blog for the brewery um, since 2013. And around our 10-year anniversary, I went back and I looked at all the old blog posts. And it made me really happy to see that, like, the same stuff that we're doing today, all that groundwork was laid 10 years ago. And I don't mean to say we haven't adapted, but like, the idea was always there. And I think that's super important. I mean, the expression, like, keep your head on a swivel, or like, wherever you look, you're going to go. It's true. So, like I said before, we want a fun environment with really good beer that offers something for everybody. That's kind of our niche, and that's kind of broad, but I think that has worked really well for us. And, if we can keep doing that, we'll be okay.
Hell yeah.
I think it's important for breweries to be true to themselves. Some of the breweries that we respect in the Northern Virginia area, we like the people, and therefore we like the beer, and the beer is good, and therefore we like the experience. And we've talked a lot about the experience and finding your niche and things like that. Connecting with your consumer is a very important thing that breweries really need to dial in. Like, if you're passionate and you can deliver that passion through your product, through your experience at your tasting room, however, you're going to get loyal customers because they're going to want to support you because they believe in more than just this tastes good. They believe in these are good people. I want this to be around, and I think you're going to see those people do fine as long as they can keep their head above water and be true to themselves and keep chugging along. There's going to be a lot of breweries that get tired. To Jake's point of like anyone that is in this industry that is, I mean, Jake and I are still pretty young. We opened our brewery when we were 25. Um, So most brewery owners, they open when they're 55 or older because that's what, it's their retirement. And if they're facing the same difficulties that we are, they're not going to want to put in the time and effort to pivot and keep your head on a swivel and adjust. Like, they're either going to close or I don't know, just stay small and make it just an extension of a place for them and their friends to drink. But um, you're definitely going to see a little bit more calling of the herd. And um, as far as what is the future of craft beer hold, I don't know. And if anyone tells you that we know what it is, well, they know what they might be doing, but it's very difficult to know because, like, I wish 10 years ago that we could go, hey, this is what the trend's going to be in 3 years. Hazy IPAs. Let's start making them now. This is the next one. Fruited sours, pastry stouts. Like, it, certainly there have been people breweries that have um, paved the way for that. And I think there's going to be some other breweries that pave the way for the next style, hype thing, whatever it is. And then you're going to see people following behind that. But in the meantime, if you can still, stay true to yourself at the core and offer a good experience, I mean, that's what's going to get you through these tough times.
Hell yeah, man! You guys drop gems. I agree with everything you both said. Like, I really feel like that's it. The the breweries that are going to survive are going to just have to figure it out and find what works for them. Like you said, like the niche, and then, which is funny, we say niche up here, but I always find niche is a funny word. And then on top of that, yeah, it's just like finding that, like, it's almost like that mix that works for you, whether mix of experience plus offerings, whether that offering is beer, wine, cider, seltzer, etc. And just we're at this. I was saying to the boys off air that I feel like we're at this weird pinnacle where, like, the economy we're in, it's almost like beer has had such a good run. Like, I got into it a crooked run, some might say. I got in at around 2011 when I started doing the stupid selfie review things, and seeing it in the last 12 years has been pretty interesting. And the way that it's changed, I feel like I got in before beer was cool, and then beer became slowly cooler, and then it peaked, and then shit hit the fan, and then we're sort of at maybe we went too crazy. Like, there was a beer boom. You guys were way before that. Excuse me. And so many breweries have opened up since. When you started, how many breweries are in the States?
I think when we started, I want to say either 4,000 or 6,000.
And what are we at, 9K?
And close to 10K. I think at the peak it went above 10K.
Fuck,
and now it's a hair shy of that. But
okay, so, like, if you look at that, like, that's a pretty crazy amount. In Canada, there's a fraction of that, but it's similar, like, ratios as far as, like, the growth level. And, like, I just really feel like, maybe we all haven't lived through it aside from 2008. Like, I was working at a bank in Australia, and I lost my job because of what happened in the States. So, like, I got paid out pretty well, so I wasn't mad. But, like, it has these global things. So right now, this global shit, whether I don't know if it's a recession or the interest rates or the inflation or all of this stuff, we're at this weird peak where maybe there's been too many breweries, some might say, to service a clientele that isn't growing. Like, maybe it's, that's what I've heard anyway. The beer, the drinkers, I guess, and the size of that is not currently growing, but they are, like, Gen Z apparently isn't drinking that much. And I feel like it's because of health conscious stuff. Hence, I think things like wine and seltzer and cider, which are significantly less calories than beer, being a more attractive option. But if the same company that offers the beer can offer those things, then everyone's happy. So I don't know. Like, to me, that's what you guys are doing seems like the blueprint to the best way to sort of make it forward until, we're at that peak where we're cruising down, and eventually it'll hit a point, and then we'll just come right back again where all the maybe trim the fat as such. The companies that maybe weren't meant for it, that weren't really innovating, that weren't doing anything exceptional, that weren't serving their community, aren't going to make it through, and it's quite sad because obviously a lot of we've lost one really important brewery here is gone out of business now, which has been really devastating for Ontario specifically. And I know we're going to see a lot more of that, whether it's sort of like different varieties, different styles and types of breweries. But it's going to be super interesting to see what happens. Beer is such a strange, unique little world that got massive, and now we haven't seen this before. We had never saw a beer boom until the last 5-6 years, and now we're seeing the other side of it. We don't know what happens, and I feel like you guys are doing what if I owned a brewery. My partner and I have a social media agency. We've owned that for like 8.5 years, so we're sort of in the I very much respect entrepreneurs, particularly cats like you guys who were young. Like, I'm older than you guys now. You told me your age. Like, you doing that shit at 25, bro? Get the fuck out of here. That is crazy. Doing that and rolling the dice and being successful at this, and then also seeing the future and be like, yo, we want to get into this, and this. That's hedging your bets. I think that's the best case scenario. If I was in your position, that's exactly what I would do. I think that's by far the best move. And I think if breweries are able to do it, like you said, though, finding your niches, I think is super important. But I still think that you got to investigate these different areas. Like, there's going to be some breweries that are going to be able to make it off hazy IPAs, and more power to them. But, if that's not your shit, who knows how long that's going to reign supreme? Who knows? It's been longer than probably most of us thought. Yeah, here we are in 2023. It's been 6 years at least since they've been like top of the game. But yeah, I don't know. This is fascinating hearing you guys really like talk about it and see where it can all go. It's cool. I don't know. It's fun and scary and weird and strange all at the same time.
Well, so
I'm pretty much an open book, and when it comes to this stuff, like, this is probably the most forward I've been talking about it.
I appreciate that.
With somebody who's not another owner, but it's kind of high time that all of us started being real about this. There's, the last 7 years has had some incredible highs and some really cool stuff, but like I said before, like, I feel like this is a blip, in an otherwise, like, and it's an industry that's existed for 1,000 years.
Longer,
and
probably. Yeah.
Like, it's probably going to continue similar to the other 1,800 years that it was before. So I just feel like, for us at least, having a clear idea of all these things and not having any illusions about anything, and having the experience too, is going to help us. And yeah, I think that there's always going to be people that want to, drink craft beer, but the last 7 years has had some real craziness. I mean, you've seen some stuff like, when I've checked Untappd before, like, some of the highest rated beers are really, really tiny breweries making smoothie sours that like 10 people drink, and like, that's just not sustainable.
No.
Like, as an industry or something that drives an industry, like, it's just not. So yeah, I'm happy that we always made a variety of beers, and that we can, like, the American Pale Ale that I mentioned earlier, we've been making that since 2013. We haven't, like, we pivoted towards more of these like regular type beers, but this isn't us, like, pulling this stuff out of thin air. We've always been doing this. We're just doing it more now. We made hype styles when that was what people wanted, but now that that's not in vogue anymore. We're gonna make the stuff that kind of got us into brewing beer.
Mm-hmm.
More of that stuff. And again, like just ultimately, like as long as the beer is like decent, what people really want is they want a fun time with friends. And we have 3 locations, one of which is our original spot, which is essentially a dive bar that brewed its own beer. It took a major hit during the pandemic because it's so tiny that people didn't want to hang out in an enclosed space, with low ceilings that was 600 square feet. But now it's doing better than ever because people want a place that like has like, you know, hardcore bands playing on the weekends and, has that shoulder to shoulder feel in it. Like, it's great to have that kind of diversity. And honestly, I think if we ever did another location, it would be something like that, where, it's like 1 or 2 bartenders and they're just pouring beer. And the beer is good, but it's not so much about that. It's more about like just having a really fun time. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. I know, Lee. Did you have something to add to? I know you guys were jumping in.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So in America, there was already a craft beer boom in what, Jake, the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, I mean, this is the third craft beer boom, so it's
Really?
nothing new. I mean, yeah. So you had the kind of '80s, early '90s one where you had
Okay.
like Sierra Nevada, Pete's Wicked Ale, other stuff like that, and that crested and broke. And then you had one that kind of broke around 2000, and then you had another one, kind of mini crash with like Green Flash, and
Yes.
not necessarily like a crash, but all the West Coast breweries that built East Coast plants,
Mm-hmm.
and then didn't really end up using them. So yeah, sorry, continue.
So, Greg, to your point of we haven't seen this before, we have seen this before, and so basically what happens is, and you can go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, there's, I think in Richmond, um, the first canned beer came out of Richmond or something like that, but the brewery doesn't exist anymore. And you look at big breweries, Anchor, Steam, more recently, Ballast Point, like brewery, breweries at this point, I would say from this point moving on, the reason that they close is because a brewery is a business and they're going to get mismanaged. Whether they're not keeping up with the trends, they're not listening to the consumers, they're not making adjustments, they're making poor business decisions. A brewery is a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And to Jake's point, West Coast breweries, Green Flash, opening up on the East Coast, they overextended themselves. They got too ambitious, couldn't handle financially, and collapsed. Like, cash is king, and cash flow is very important to sustain a business. And um, what I was saying earlier is like Jake and I don't necessarily brew the beer as much as we used to, but we're more involved in the business side of it than ever before, and that's primarily what we talk about. So I agree with you. I think there is going to be, what we're going to see is we're going to see more breweries close, primarily because they're mismanaged. And then what's going to happen on the other side and when it's going to happen, that I could not tell you, other than the breweries that are able to stick around. Previously, what happened, like in the United States, there's never been 10,000 breweries. And as
Ever,
far
right?
as
Yeah.
I know,
It's
I think
crazy.
the opening, and there's still breweries that are opening as we speak. The number of breweries opening and the number of breweries closing, I think there's maybe slightly more closing than opening,
Damn.
but we're still going to be around 10,000 breweries again, which we've never seen in the 90s, the 2000s, um, the early 2010 before everything like popped off. So there's going to be breweries that close, but what happens after that? I don't think we're going to go to 20,000 breweries. Like that's just going to be bonkers if that happens. That's like the Starbucks of craft beer. But who knows where the bottom's going to be? You know, of what the closing is going to be for the market to um, craft beer market to be able to sustain itself. Like craft beer, there's no doubt that craft beer has made it into everyday life, right? That's not going to go away. It's just going to be how many breweries can manage within that footprint, locally, regionally, across the country, things like that, and that comes down to business savvy, and what you're doing to uh, make yourself known. So that some of the articles that Jake and I have been sharing with each other, primarily the larger companies that rely on being solely in grocery stores, having across the country distribution, um, those are going to be suffering a lot, all the way down to we primarily sell most of our beer in the tap room. Like we have the ability to shrink a little bit, but we're still going to be primarily selling it out of the tap room because we're focused more on local rather than large distribution. And from the articles that we've read, um, it says that we're going to be able to survive longer than the larger breweries focused more on distribution, because although there are less of them, they're still competing with local craft breweries. So at wherever that brewery started, that would be their local market. But if they're across 50 states, the further away you get from your home market, the least control you have over um, that market, and you're competing against those local markets. And so, strength is going to be consumers should have more loyalty and strength towards those smaller local markets. So you kind of shrink things back to where you are. And if you've invested yourself to be too bloated, too large, and you can't handle it, and you've taken out loans to open up an East Coast production, you're going to go bankrupt because you don't have any money. So
Yeah, I have heard something about that, about like it all coming back to local, like that. The original idea of a brew pub is to serve the local community, and that was the point. And then it just got bigger and bigger, and the footprint got larger as I guess beer itself grew. So I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's just really coming back to that, and maybe I feel like it's all of the things we talked about tonight. I feel like we hit on a whole bunch of really important things, like the reemergence and the importance of flagship beers, to that reliability, that localness, the brewery that's serving the community. So you're like, well, this is my local, and they've got Heart and Soul IPA that I love, and every time they do it, they've done that beer for X years, and I know that every batch gets better and better, and it's going to be fire every time I go by. I just feel like that is becoming a valuable thing for consumers, and I feel like at least in the short term, that's what we're going to come back down to. And I think also, I don't know, I really believe like that was the last trip. We were in the States for about 5 weeks, and like I just I don't know, I believe that that's where it's going. Like um the local side, but also like the depth of offering, or the breadth, I'm sorry, of offerings, knowing that you can get beer, but you can serve all of your community. And like, instead of going like, oh, if we're having a work outing or a bunch of us are going out for a birthday, instead of going to a brewery, because I'm the beer guy, I don't want to drag everyone to a brewery, so let's just go to a bar where they got a half decent tap list, and then everyone could. But no, I could go to an actual brewery that I want to go to, yet everyone else is equally served. I just think that is such the future, and I was very much convinced of that in this last trip, and then hearing about what you guys are doing in DC just solidifies that. And I just feel like I'm seeing more and more of that, and I think if breweries aren't emulating that, like, they're just missing out on. It's like you can be local and still be niche, but also serve the wider community as well. And then you don't have to necessarily rely on that beer tourism. That maybe that could be looked at as a bonus. Particularly like you guys were saying that maybe Northern Virginia isn't looked at. Would you count Richmond as Northern Virginia, or is that not? Is that become like central? Central.
Oh, definitely not.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So like I feel like obviously that's known as like is that true? That's the beer capital of Virginia. Is that accurate? Or not necessarily?
Richmond has some very good breweries. I think Northern Virginia has some very good breweries as well.
So there's not like a like universally like agreed upon like. I just think Virginia as a whole is fire. Like I'm just enamored by the whole region, but like there's no like like Toronto in Ontario has the concentration of breweries. So like that's the spot. Is that's not necessarily a thing out there as much?
The thing is like this is not me speaking as a Northern Virginia brewery owner. Just from an objective quality point, I think that most people outside of Virginia, or maybe even in Virginia, would say Richmond is probably the bigger beer. Richmond's
like
a city,
hub?
So
right.
naturally it's a city, and also a really cool city. Like it's gonna have that going on for it.
Gotcha.
But in terms of the beers available today, like I definitely think Northern Virginia has just as good beer available. Like, and I think that's pretty objective. Like we have, a multitude of good breweries. A really good farm brewery here. When it comes to any particular style, like I think we're putting out stuff that's just as good. So, but yeah, Richmond is definitely a place that, like, if you're a beer tourist, you can hit like more breweries in a smaller footprint. So,
Gotcha. That's the difference. Okay. Either way, though, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. As much as maybe some of the coverage might be pessimistic for the future of beer, I feel like at worst, it's like temporary. Like I think you guys obviously feel the same, or you wouldn't have invested into a third location and multiple other avenues. With the the wine seltzer and cider. I don't know. I just feel like it's cool, and I feel like what you're doing, it's like exciting to see what you guys are doing specifically, because it shows that like, hey, we're like bullish on this shit, and we're going all in on all of this stuff, and we're hitting everybody, and we're making all of our fermented products A1 fire. Our experience is fire. The food is killer, and like definitely can speak to that as well on top of the beer. I don't know, man. It's just really cool. I'm just really happy for you guys, and I appreciate you, man. This is fantastic. I feel like we really got like a solid perspective on all of this. This is great. It's like such a it's such a cool growth since the last chat.
thank you, and I'll just say one last thing.
Yeah, man.
So, what with DC? Like DC is doing really well, and it is in a neighborhood that hasn't fully arrived yet, but it's already doing well, and it's less than a year open. Our Leesburg location is doing better than ever. The location that is feeling the same blues that is affecting the beer industry is our production location, and that's because it's in a warehouse space, and that is just kind of harder to sell to people these days. But if you look at I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
If 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you had a friend that said, "Hey man, do you want to come drink some very expensive beer with me in a warehouse, and we're gonna sit on patio furniture, and there's no food and no music, and you want to come do that?" You would say like, absolutely not. And craft beer became this like really, really huge phenomenon that drew people to a place where you would go to an office park and you would drink beer in an office park setting, and you do all that because you really liked it. But now things are kind of swinging back towards location is actually important. You need to be in a place with actual foot traffic, and you need to be a fun place. Like, like I said, like our dive bar esque location is doing really well. Like people like that aspect of it. Um, so it's not really anything surprising. It's just like, the natural kind of tendency of customers is to want something like that.
Mm.
So the DC location is kind of similar. It's like a really cool area that is needing something like that. So, our main location is the place that brews the beer for the other spots. But yeah, like it's just kind of only natural. Like people are not necessarily going to want to go to, an office park and turn out for beer releases and stay in line and stuff, and that's fine.
Hmm.
It's a more mature beer market now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, man. I'm just trying to think. As you were saying, I was just picturing what I'd done recently, and I could picture myself. I'd been to a bunch of breweries in office parks, and whilst maybe it's a little strange driving up, you're like, where am I going? But like, I don't know. Maybe you get used to it after a while. But for the newer consumer, it's pretty weird to pull up. Where a bunch of manufacturing or telemarketing companies like are based, and then all of a sudden is this like brewery with all this stuff. Like I feel like it might be a little more acceptable, but it doesn't make it less weird, I guess. But I see what you're
Oh, it's
saying.
it's
Like,
not necessarily about weirdness. It's more like you're not gonna have people walking by.
okay,
You know,
so you're
the,
talking just
the
the
people
walk-by
that come,
traffic. I understand.
yeah, like the people that come, like they're into it, and their friends, like once they get there, are like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're not gonna have. 5 years ago, you would have people like, oh my god, I have to go to a craft brewery. Like, let me look up what ones are near me. Now it's more like, yeah, like you do need to depend more on people like just happening by your place.
Gotcha. And that's a little tougher in those locations. Completely understood. Destination versus just kind of like, you know, in the neighborhood type of thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, but look, you guys got a diversification of locations as well, and then experiences at the three locations. Even though I've only been to one, the sounds of it, the three different ones are entirely different. So it's servicing multiple communities in different ways, and yet once again, it comes still. I still feel like it's still hedging your bets, which is the smartest move in this economy, to have these different experiences that appeal to different people, and you never know. Like it's good to have the production facility. I guess is paying its way by feeding the other two locations with the liquid that it needs. So it's
Yeah.
you know it's still cool. And once again, though, I mean, even just to like sit back, like you said, you're looking at the blog post, but like just looking back at 10 years, I mean, that's pretty crazy. And I guess you got to be proud and like be like, man, like we did this. Like this is pretty sick. Like whatever happens, we did 10 years, and I don't know the number of how many breweries get to that milestone. It's pretty it's not insignificant at all. Like I don't know, for the amount of people I talk to and the tabs that I keep on everything, I just don't think there's that many breweries that are around for that long. So it's like you're doing something right,
Yeah.
boys. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree, and we want to do 20 years, so
Let's go.
we're in it to win it, and
Let's go.
yeah, it's going to be a different next decade for sure. But it's all cyclical, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Ride the wave out.
My laptop's about to die, and
No,
I'm very
that's it. I
sorry
was
for all
gonna
my
wrap. No.
equipment
I
things.
want to wrap up anyway because I'm super conscious of the time. I know we said like 2, and it's been like 3:15 almost. But this has been such a dope convo, boys. Let me just take. I'm gonna take the thumbnail real quick. I'm just gonna take a screenshot of the thing. Do you guys want to hold up some cans or just something for that? There we go.
Do you have White Oak, Lee? I'll hold up.
Get that Lager Days in the Labor Days. I'm sorry. Beautiful. There you guys, like get that face, get that pretty face in there. All right, 3, 2, 1. Champion. I'm gonna wrap this up on air and then just stick around off air, and hopefully your laptop will last. And we'll say goodbye. But boys, once again, seriously, thank you so much for your time. This has been genuinely dope. I've enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. Beers were spectacular, genuinely. It's been really cool to catch back up and see what's been happening. I'm super, super happy for you guys, man. Thank you both for your time and for hanging out with me tonight. Where can everybody find Crooked Run online? Or in real life?
CrookedRunFermentation.com.
Okay, everything's there. On social?
Crooked Run Fermentation on Instagram. And if you were ever traveling out of Dulles Airport, we are 5 minutes away. If you are in DC, we're definitely worth checking out there. There's a lot of really good breweries, and there's a really good one. Some friends of ours, the brewery I mentioned earlier, Lost Generation, is in walking distance for us, so come check out both. Other half isn't too far away either, but we're in a very good area there. So yeah, and then if you happen to be in Leesburg, which is the little tiny town that we started in, that original location is amazing. Is my favorite place to hang out. Like I said, it's a dive bar that brewed its own beer. Come there, listen to some bluegrass or some punk bands, and have a cigar out on the patio. It's great.
Let's go. Beautiful. I love it. Guys, make sure you check it out. And also, look out for Crooked Run at your favorite if you're in the States. Look out for it in your favorite store and ask for it. Is that helpful if people ask for Crooked Run at the store? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ask for demand. Don't ask, demand it. And God damn it, they'll make it happen. Stick around after. We'll just wrap this up real quick. But guys, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit the notification bell so you know when the new video drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast. We drop every Wednesday in the morning for the audio, in the evening for the video. Guys, we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers, fellas. Peace.